You're already legally married. What are you doing applying again? Bigamy is a crime, Miss Olson. Kira stood frozen on the courthouse steps, clutching a newly printed marriage certificate, her fingers trembling. The man beside her, hired to stage a fake marriage, looked at her in stunned disbelief. Miss Olson, you're already married. Why in the world would you hire me for a sham wedding? Then, as if afraid of being dragged into legal mess, he added quickly, also, the deposit's non-refundable, and left without another word. Kira bit her lower lip, struggling to make sense of it all. She had never even had a boyfriend. So how was she already married? Her gaze dropped to the certificate. In the photo, her expression was stiff, her smile forced. The mole by her eye proved it was her. But the man beside her, strong jawline, noble features, piercing eyes that seemed to stare right through the black and white photo. His thin lips curved slightly, like he was in on a secret no one else knew. His name? Lewis Horton. Kira's heart thudded. She had never seen this man in her life. What the hell is going on? She pulled out her phone, snapped a photo of the certificate, and sent it on WhatsApp to a contact marked only by a black avatar. Help me find out who this is. The reply came instantly. Got it. Setting aside the confusion, for now, she started her old electric scooter and drove toward the luxurious Olsen villa. Today was her half-sister Isla's engagement day. Servants buzzed about decorating the estate with flowers and finery. Kira quietly parked her scooter to the side, avoiding attention. But the whispers had already started. Who's that? She's gorgeous. That's the illegitimate one. The boss doesn't even acknowledge her. I heard her mother barged in pregnant when Mrs. Olsen was due herself. Same-day delivery. What a scandal. At least Miss Kira knows her place. She's been gone since junior high. Why show up now? Kira kept her head down and entered the mansion. Her mother, Poppy Hill, was waiting by the stairs. Still elegant, still cold. She grabbed Kira's arm and pulled her upstairs. Come, your sister needs help. Did you get the marriage certificate? Kira's voice was flat. Yes, a technical truth, even if the groom wasn't who anyone expected. Good, Poppy said, already dismissive. Remember, Jake Horton is Isla's fiancé. He's from a noble family. Someone like you could never match him. Only Isla deserves that kind of man. Kira's lips curled ever so slightly. Jake Horton, the man who had chased her for 4 years in college, only to propose to her sister after graduation. When Poppy found out, she ordered Kira to marry someone else. Immediately. That was how it always was. The slightest overlap with Isla, and Kira was expected to disappear. She was the stain, the shame, the illegitimate daughter. A mistake that should never speak up. But not anymore. Her tone was calm, but her eyes were sharp. We agreed. This is the last time. Poppy's lips thinned. I heard you. They reached Isla's room, a princess's chamber overflowing with diamonds and designer pieces. Isla sat like royalty, choosing her jewelry. Kira, plainly dressed, stood with silent dignity. Oh, Kira. Isla blinked. What brings you here? Before Kira could answer, Poppy cut in with a smug smile. She got married today. Isla blinked in surprise. Really? That fast? Who is he? Better than Jake. Poppy scoffed. Better? Don't be ridiculous. No one in Ocean Ion is above young Mr. Horton. Her man didn't even dare show his face, probably afraid his shabby clothes would offend our guests. Isla's lips twitched. Still, Kira's very beautiful. Even Jake couldn't ignore her in college. Poppy snorted. Beauty is useless on trash. People like her marry beneath them. Jake never truly wanted her. You, Isla, are the rightful match. Kira's fingers clenched. The man in the photo, he didn't look like a pauper. He looked like someone who owned the world. But she didn't bother defending herself. It wasn't worth it. Isla, struggling in her tight dress, glanced at Kira with a coy smile. She needed help with her shoes. Poppy barked, Kira, don't just stand there. Help your sister. Kira didn't move. Her voice was low and cold. You help her. Poppy snapped. What's that tone? Just because you got married, you think you've grown wings? That freeloader of a husband will bring you crawling back one day. Mark my words. She pointed a finger. This family raised you. You owe us everything." Before Kira could respond, a tall figure appeared at the door. Taylor Olson, their father. He frowned. "A guest of honor is arriving soon. And this is what I find." Isla played innocent. Poppy pointed fingers. "She's disrespecting her mother. Just because she got married today." Taylor turned to Kira. "You got married? Why didn't you let us arrange someone better? Where's the certificate?" Kira hesitated but pulled it out. Before she could show it, Poppy snatched it from her hands. "Let's see what kind of lowlife you hooked up with." Just then, Isla asked sweetly, "Dad, who's the guest you're so excited about?" Taylor beamed. "Lewis Horton." The room fell silent. Kira's heart stopped. Lewis Horton? Her husband. Isla blinked in confusion. Lewis Horton? Never heard of him. Is he really that important? Even Kira perked up slightly. She'd heard of many names in Oceanian's elite circles, but not his. Taylor folded his arms with a grave look. "That's no surprise. He's an enigma. Even I haven't met him in person. But make no mistake, he's the real head of the Horton family now. Only 28, and already in complete control." Poppy's eyes widened. "Jake's uncle? And he's the one in power?" She nearly gasped. Wouldn't that make him an even better match for Isla than Jake? Taylor scowled. "Don't talk nonsense. Mr. Horton is married." Kira's eyes narrowed. "Married? If he was the man in her marriage certificate, then he should know what was going on." Poppy pouted. "Whoever married him must be the luckiest woman in Oceanion." Kira turned to look at Taylor just in time to hear him say, "No one knows who she is." The couple keeps an extremely low profile. They rarely attend events. He rubbed his chin thoughtfully. But why he decided to show up here today, that's strange. The Olsen family was comfortably wealthy, but not on the level of the Hortons. Even Isla's engagement to Jake was considered marrying up. For Lewis Horton, the Lewis Horton, to appear in person, Poppy, glowing with self-importance, jumped to her own conclusion. It must be Isla's charm. "Quick, this necklace won't do. We need something that screams class and power." She tossed Kira's certificate printout back in her hands without a second glance and hurried off with Isla to dig through their jewelry collection. Kira caught the paper midair, expression unreadable. The butler passed by with a polite nod. "Sir, the Horton family has arrived." Taylor adjusted his collar, clearly nervous. As he moved past Kira, he paused. "You haven't been back in a while. Stay for a toast, then go." Kira nodded, her voice calm. "Sure." She wanted to see who Lewis Horton really was. Upstairs, Poppy beamed as she helped Isla fasten an emerald necklace. Looking at her perfectly groomed daughter, she couldn't hide her pride. Over 2 decades ago, she'd been Taylor's lover. If not for that woman, Jody South, the official Mrs. Olsen, ****, would have had the title and status. That night in the hospital, she'd seized her one chance. She gave birth at the same time and switched their daughters. Now, her daughter was being married into Oceanian's top family. And Jody? Still the official wife, yes, but withered, sickly, and soon forgotten. As for Kira, Poppy sneered in her heart. That girl married a nobody, just like she deserved. Downstairs, Kira stood quietly near the base of the stairs, half hidden in shadow, staring at the entrance. Then, slowly, Mrs. Olsen descended with the help of a servant. Her frame looked thin and frail in a deep purple dress, but she carried herself with a quiet dignity. "Ma'am, you shouldn't push yourself," the servant said softly. "I won't miss Isla's big day," she coughed weakly, her voice fading. They passed by Kira without noticing her. Kira's expression softened. Of everyone in this house, the only one who had ever shown her kindness was the woman with every right to hate her. As a child, Kira often went hungry. Poppy either forgot to feed her or deliberately ignored her. Kira had resorted to digging through trash for scraps. But one day, Mrs. Olsen saw her, and after that, a plate of food always appeared in the garden. Every day, for 12 years, ***. If not for that quiet act of compassion, Kira might not have survived it all. From the hallway, Kira watched her slowly walk away, coughing softly. Just then, commotion erupted at the front door. The Horton family had arrived. Kira straightened instinctively, heart pounding. Taylor and Mrs. Olson greeted them respectfully. A few polite words were exchanged before the entourage was allowed inside. And there he was, Lewis Horton, dressed in a tailored black suit that hugged his broad shoulders. He walked at the center like a star orbited by lesser lights. His features were even sharper in person, chiseled, intimidating. His every step exuded power and restraint. He was exactly like the man in her certificate. As if sensing her gaze, Lewis turned slightly. Their eyes met. Kira froze. His gaze was cold, assessing, unreadable. Just as she tried to decipher what lay behind it, he looked away. Taylor smiled. "Mr. Horton, did your wife not accompany you today?" Kira felt the weight of another glance. Lewis replied coolly, "She couldn't make it." They moved toward the living room. Behind them, Jake Horton followed in a crisp suit, chatting with Isla. He looked more polished than in college, but didn't spare Kira a single glance. Once everyone was seated and the formalities began, Kira slowly stepped out from the shadows. She stood by the entryway, silently watching. Suddenly, Poppy grabbed her arm. "Kira," she hissed, "why are you still here? Still hung up on Jake? He's your brother-in-law now." Kira pulled her arm away with an icy smirk. "Relax. I'm not desperate to be anyone's mistress. Mr. Olson invited me to stay for a toast." She deliberately emphasized the title. Asterisk Mr. Olson asterisk, never calling him father. Poppy's face twisted. "Do you really think that counts as an invitation? Know your place. I'm barely tolerated here. And you, a bastard, want to stick around like a guest of honor? You're nothing but a stain on this family. Leave quietly, or I'll—" Kira rolled her eyes. God, does she ever stop talking? She was about to retort when movement caught her eye. Lewis Horton had stood up, gesturing to his phone, and began walking toward the balcony to take a call. Kira's eyes lit up. "Fine, I'm leaving," she said casually. She turned, brushing past Poppy, but instead of heading for the door, she silently veered toward the balcony. The open-air garden path connected to it. She approached, heart pounding, just as Lewis ended his call and looked up. His icy eyes locked on hers. Dangerous. Sharp. Regal. Asterisk asterisk. Kira hesitated, but then a mischievous smile touched her lips. She tilted her head slightly and asked with a playful glint in her eyes.
Hey, welcome to Firescale Audiobooks. If you enjoy our audiobooks, please consider subscribing to the channel. Also, feel free to share your review in the comments section below.
A glass door separated the lively sounds in the living room. Kira was staring intently at Lewis Horton, observing his reactions. Upon hearing the way she addressed him, he became even more unapproachable. His dark eyes harbored a frosty gaze, devoid of any emotional fluctuation, and he turned to head back to the living room. Kira quickly stepped forward, blocking his way. Lewis frowned a little. "Out of my way." His voice was deep and pleasant, and his tone carried a touch of elegance, which made people want to hear him speak even more. Kira suspected something. "You don't recognize me?" Lewis looked down at her. "Should I?" Upon entering the Olson family home, he felt that an odd pair of eyes were closely following him. That gaze was open and transparent, a far cry from the obsequious and nauseating glances of others. That was why Lewis gave her a few more glances. The girl was very beautiful. Her skin was fair. Her amorous eyes and the mole at the corner of her eye were attractive but not flirtatious. Although she stood in the corner obediently, she exuded a vague, rebellious aura. And when she noticed him looking at her, she didn't evade. Instead, she looked right back at him. He had initially thought she was different from the women who threw themselves at him, but didn't expect her to be even bolder than them. She addressed him as honey. Lewis was a little impatient as he emphasized, "Miss, I'm married. Please behave." Kira was a bit stunned. This man clearly didn't recognize her, yet he said he was married. Was there a mistake in the Civil Affairs Bureau's registration? She asked, "May I ask who your wife is?" "It has nothing to do with you." His answer was short and cold. Kira took out the photocopy of the marriage certificate and placed it in front of him. "Mr. Horton, this man is you, right?" Lewis looked at the photocopy and noticed the name of the woman on it was Kira Olson. Looking up again, he mocked her. Miss Olson, an original isn't expensive, right? You should be more professional if you're forging this. With that, Lewis didn't return to the living room. Instead, he strode off to the parking lot through the small garden. Kira ran after him, trying to talk it through, but she was blocked by two black-suited bodyguards. Kira stood her ground, calling out to him as he walked away. Mr. Horton, this document is genuine. If you don't believe it, you can check it with the Civil Affairs Bureau. Lewis didn't stop. He got in the car and left straight away. His personal assistant remained behind and returned to the living room, where he was met by Isla. Isla had just witnessed Kira clinging to Lewis Horton, but didn't catch what exactly they were saying. Seeing Lewis leave and Kira riding out on her electric scooter to follow him, she immediately asked, "Why did Mr. Horton leave? Did someone offend him?" The personal assistant smiled lightly. "Mr. Horton has some matters to attend to and had to leave early. Could you please inform the elders of the household, Miss Olson?" The boss didn't reprimand the girl, which meant he didn't hold it against her. Isla immediately nodded, courteously seeing the assistant out. After setting the wedding date and finishing lunch, the rest of the Horton family took their leave. After seeing off the guests, Taylor was worried. Why did Mr. Horton leave? Did we do anything to upset him? Thinking back to how Jake seemed distracted all day as if he was looking for someone, and then to Kira's trouble-causing face, Isla clenched her fists. Her eyes flickered. "Dad, I saw Kira pestering Mr. Horton. Mr. Horton seemed really angry when he left, and he left a message." "What message?" "Mr. Horton said, he wants you to teach your daughter well." Isla bit her lip. With Kira behaving like this, will the Horton family think we're not disciplining her properly? Taylor's face turned ashen. Kira was riding her electric scooter, and just as she left the villa area, she lost sight of Lewis. As she was regretting her actions, her phone rang. Upon answering, she heard her subordinate, Samuel's voice over the line. "Boss, a lot of people have been looking into who Drive South is lately." Kira raised an eyebrow. "They haven't uncovered anything, have they?" "Of course not. After all, no one would ever guess that Drive South, who conquered the issue of hydrogen fuel, is actually a harmless-looking young woman who just graduated from college." "Anything else?" Kira cut off his rambling. "Oh yes, I found the information on Lewis Horton." "Tell me." Lewis Horton is the second son of the Horton family's old master. Rumor has it that he has a violent and ruthless personality, hence he was sent overseas when he was little. Everyone thought that the family property would be handed over to his elder brother, that is, Jake Horton's father. However, Lewis Horton returned to the country unexpectedly last week, using some ruthless method to force his old man to retire and take control of the Horton Group. Samuel curiously asked, "Didn't you find a convenient person for a fake marriage today? How did the groom suddenly turn out to be such a cold-blooded fiend?" "Boss, if your marital status isn't stable, it'll affect the company's IPO." Kira frowned. "Look up his contact information and schedule. I'll go talk to him again." The reason she agreed to Poppy's absurd demand for an immediate marriage was that being married as the legal representative of the company would be more favorable for the IPO. But she was married to a stranger and didn't know what plot she might be involved in. Lewis Horton wasn't an ordinary person, so the best solution would be to get a divorce as soon as possible to avoid unnecessary disputes. After hanging up, Kira rubbed her temples. Things were a bit troublesome. Given Lewis Horton's status, he was escorted by bodyguards when he traveled, and it wouldn't be easy to meet him. She shouldn't have impulsively called him honey earlier, which had upset him. She sighed, started her little scooter, and slowly headed home. Leaving the bustling city center, she arrived at a city village on the outskirts. When she moved out of the Olson family home in junior high school, she didn't have much money and could only afford to rent an old house here. She had since grown accustomed to it and never moved. As she was about to reach her home, after turning a corner, an old lady in her 80s or 90s suddenly sprang out from the side of the road. Kira slammed on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a collision. When she looked at the old woman, she initially thought the woman was trying to deliberately provoke an accident, but quickly realized something was wrong. Although the old woman was thin and short, she was well-dressed and didn't appear to be from an ordinary family. She had a tag around her neck, which had a contact number with a note that said, "If you find this lady, please dial this number. A reward will be given." It had to be Alzheimer's disease. Someone was missing a family member. Kira immediately took out her phone and began to dial the number on the tag. The old woman was staring blankly before, but she suddenly became active. She grabbed Kira's wrist, her cloudy eyes shining brightly. "Granddaughter-in-law, you are my granddaughter-in-law." The corner of Kira's mouth twitched. She had been single for 22 years, but suddenly she had another husband. Was the Civil Affairs Bureau doing husband wholesale these days? She found it amusing and casually asked, "Granny, who's your grandson?" The old lady racked her brains. What was her grandson's name again? "Oh, right, Lewis Horton." The old lady began. "His name is Lewis. What's his surname?" The name she had just recollected slipped out of her mind again. The old woman was somewhat anxious. Her mouth opened and closed repeatedly, yet she couldn't form the words. "Take it easy, ma'am. It doesn't matter if you can't remember." Kira consoled her before making a phone call. Meanwhile, in a street a few blocks away, Lewis was sitting in a Bentley. His face was gloomy, and his underling, Tom Davis, was too scared to even breathe. "I'm sorry, sir. I failed you. I lost old Mrs. Horton." Lewis didn't respond, and his chilling aura made Tom shudder in fear. Old Mrs. Horton would often get lost in her thoughts. Who would have expected that she would suddenly snap back to lucidity and sneak out when the others were all distracted? Having checked the security cameras, they found that she had taken a bus to the suburbs all by herself. This area was a bit run down, and many of the streets didn't have cameras installed, making a thorough search the only option. Just then, the phone rang. Lewis immediately answered it. A serene female voice came from the other end. "Hello, I have the old lady you're looking for." The air in the car seemed to freeze in an instant, and the temperature felt a few degrees lower. Everyone jumped into action. Some prepared to call the police, and Tom was tracking the source of the incoming call. Lewis's eyes were sharp, and his voice was steady. "How much money do you want?" "Just kidding." The woman's voice sounded a bit cheeky. "I just want to tell you to take better care of the elderly." Then, she shared her address and hung up. Tom sighed in relief, patting his chest. What a cheeky do-gooder this woman was. Lewis squinted slightly. He suddenly found the voice on the phone oddly familiar. 5 minutes later, they arrived at the location, but the young woman who had made the call was nowhere to be found. Only a police officer was there with old Mrs. Horton. Lewis asked, "Grandma, how did you end up here?" Old Mrs. Horton replied mysteriously, "I came to see my granddaughter-in-law. She lives nearby." Lewis paused and sighed. "Grandma, there's no granddaughter-in-law. Impossible. I met her," old Mrs. Horton complained. "That heartless girl handed me over to the police and just left." "Right, give me your phone." Lewis handed her his phone. The elderly lady immediately wrote down the number from his recent calls in her little notebook. At last, she had her granddaughter-in-law's contact information. Kira was worried that once the elderly woman's family members arrived, they'd be overly grateful to her. She wasn't good at handling this kind of situation. So, when she noticed the police patrolling, she handed the old lady over to them and went straight home. The next morning, she got a call from her university advisor. "Kira, come to the university now." Kira didn't know what was going on, but she hopped on her e-bike and rushed to meet Professor Miller in his office. As she entered, she found Isla and Poppy there already. Kira narrowed her eyes slightly. Both she and Isla attended Oceanion University, which was the best university in town. Isla got in with her excellent grades. Kira, on the other hand, had just founded a company and couldn't run it remotely. Moreover, she didn't want to outshine Isla, so she deliberately kept her grades on the lower end and chose the least popular field of study, energy and power. Unexpectedly, 2 years ago, the concept of new energy suddenly became a hot topic. Isla immediately changed her field of study, and once again, they became classmates. It was normal for Isla to be here, but why was Poppy here as well? Just as she was wondering, Professor Miller's serious voice interrupted her thoughts. "Kira, your qualifications for the recommendation for postgraduate study have been revoked." Kira was astonished. Why? Your mother says your conduct and background are inappropriate and not compatible with the requirements for advanced-level students. Professor Miller frowned. Is there a misunderstanding between your mother and you? You should apologize to her as soon as possible. You have a promising future and should not jeopardize it over trivial matters. Isla sighed when she heard this. Professor Miller, I'm sure Kira's mother has her best interests at heart. She looked at Kira. You offended Mr. Horton, and he made it clear that he wants you to disappear from Ocean Ion. It took Kira a while to understand that by Mr. Horton, Isla was referring to Lewis Horton. But all she did was talk to him briefly, and anyway, he didn't seem angry when he left the day before. Was he that petty? On the other hand, Isla was known to lie impassively. As Kira was considering this, Isla walked up to her and said, Kira, this is a plane ticket that our dad bought for you. He said you should go overseas to avoid trouble. If not, even the Olsen family wouldn't be able to protect you. Kira's eyes flashed with scorn. How nice. Avoid trouble. The Olsen family was just afraid that she would get them in trouble. She glanced at the destination on the ticket. It was Argentina, the country furthest away from Kira. How much were they hoping that she would never come back? She pushed the ticket back and said coldly, Don't bother. Seeing her refusal, Isla took out a bank card and sounded quite sincere. Are you worried about living abroad? Here's $6,000. It's for your living expenses, coming out of my own pocket. I only have this much in savings right now. Take it. If it's not enough, I'll give you more after I get my allowance. Miss Kira Olsen, a daughter of the prestigious Olsen family, only has $6,000? Kira found this amusing. But Poppy snatched the bank card from Isla's hand. Isla, what are you doing? The Olsen family is already merciful enough to buy her an air ticket. She looked at Kira and ordered, You need to pack your things and leave the country right away. I've already worked on your university withdrawal. Kira looked at her. Who gave you the right to make decisions for me? Because I am your mother. Besides, with your academic performance, further study is just a waste of time. You might even struggle to graduate. It's better to start working abroad and earn money sooner. Professor Miller immediately retorted, Ma'am, you've been mistaken. Kira has a solid academic foundation during her time at the college. His words were cut short by Poppy. Professor, you don't have to defend her. I know her better than anyone else. Isn't she pursuing further postgraduate studies just because Isla is? Why doesn't she get real and see who she is? How dare she compare herself with Isla? Her coarse words left Professor Miller speechless, and then he turned his surprised gaze to Isla. You want to do postgraduate? I remember that you didn't have a student recommendation and hadn't participated in the postgraduate exam. Isla smiled slightly and said modestly, Yes, I'm taking a special admission route. If a supervisor really appreciated a student, they were allowed to recommend them personally. The prerequisite was that they had to be a renowned professor. Professor Miller understood and immediately asked, May I ask who is the professor recommending you? Isla assumed a humble demeanor. It's Drive South. His research on hydrogen energy oil cleaner fuel was successful. He has applied for a patent and was awarded a doctorate. Kira looked at her in astonishment upon hearing this. Who did you say? Drive South? Kira thought. Why didn't I know that I was to recruit Isla? Professor Miller also exclaimed, You know Drive South? Isla gave a slight smile. It's such a coincidence. My mom helped Drive South get through school back in the day. So, after Drive South succeeded, he found my family and said that my mom was his lifesaver. For the past few years, he has been providing technical support to our company. He wouldn't refuse any of my requests. Kira raised her eyebrows slightly. When she was young in the Olsen family, she relied on Mrs. Olsen's care to grow up. Therefore, after she had her own career, she contacted Mrs. Olsen under the name Drive South and invented that story so that she could have a reason to repay Mrs. Olsen's kindness. For the past few years, she had been helping Mrs. Olsen's companies with any technical issues for free. But when did she become so compliant with Isla's requests? That was such an exaggeration. However, Professor Miller believed Isla. Where is Drive South teaching now? Isla replied, I promised the dean that I would invite Drive South to teach at our university. That's great. Professor Miller was overjoyed and looked at Kira. Kira, your research direction is the same as Drive South's. When the time comes, I'll introduce you to him. If Drive South is willing to speak for you, there might still be hope for your postgraduate recommendation. Isla pretended to be worried. Professor Miller, are you sure? The Horton family is the richest family in Ocean Ion, and they allocate a lot of research funds to our university every year. Professor Miller didn't take this seriously. Drive South is in high demand now. I heard that 4 universities like Hedon University and Oxford have all sent him invitations, and many businesses want to invest in him. If Drive South is willing to step up, the university will definitely choose Drive South. Isla feigned a sigh. But Drive South is doing this for my mother's sake. If it were for me, he would definitely help us. But Kira is my father's illegitimate daughter and stands in opposition to my mom. Kira, should I ask Drive South for you? Kira said, don't bother. She found Isla like a clown. Kira smiled slightly and said to Professor Miller, Professor Miller, don't bother. As you know, I never wanted to do postgraduate studies. Professor Miller was surprised, and he felt sorry for Kira. He was the one who discovered Kira's talent in the major, and with that, he insisted that she got a postgraduate recommendation. He didn't expect things to reach this point. Tears welled up in his eyes. Then I'll write you a job reference. Poppy sneered. Don't waste your efforts. She offended Mr. Horton, and she still wants to find a job in Ocean Ion? She must be dreaming. Professor Miller was indignant. I don't believe that anyone can really do whatever they want in Ocean Ion. If you really can't find a job, come and be my teaching assistant. I'll hire you. A warm feeling surged in Kira's chest. She explained, Professor, there's just a misunderstanding between me and Mr. Horton. Everything will be fine after we clear that up. You don't need to worry. Professor Miller sighed. If you can clear up the misunderstanding, come back and be my student again. Kira looked at the ardent expectation on her teacher's eyes and spoke softly. Sure, I'll come back. It would be nice to be a tutor at the University of Ocean Ion. However, Isla clenched her fists. She didn't understand. She was an excellent student, but why did Professor Miller only value Kira, who was just an average student? Was this old man also mesmerized by Kira's pretty face? Isla was furious, but she glanced at Poppy, then suddenly said, Kira, are you going to bother Mr. Horton again? He's already married. It's not right for you to do this. Poppy was indeed consumed by anger. Smack! The sound of a slap echoed in the office. Kira's cheek was stinging. She couldn't believe that Poppy would suddenly slap her in front of Professor Miller. Poppy showed no guilt at all. She pointed at Kira's nose and cursed. You ungrateful wretch. After a few years, I see you've forgotten the rules of the house. Apologize to your sister right now. Promise that you'll never see the Hortons again. The warmth in Kira's eyes slowly faded, leaving only coldness. It seemed that Poppy didn't take her seriously when she talked about the last time the other day. She still treated Kira as the ignorant girl who used to obey everything and respected Isla. Kira thought, if she can't be reasoned with, don't blame me for being ruthless. Isla was watching from the side, and a sense of satisfaction arose from the bottom of her heart. When they were little, Kira would cringe in front of her. She never retaliated when scolded or fought back when beaten. After Kira moved out, they met again in college. Kira still looked poor, but she was no longer obedient. Isla thought, it seems that she hasn't been beaten for years and has forgotten her place. Let Poppy teach her a lesson today. Isla was still thinking about this when she saw Kira slowly come over to her, presumably to apologize. Isla smiled, but something unexpected happened at the next moment. Kira suddenly raised her head and slapped each of Isla's cheeks in turn. Smack! Smack! Isla was stunned and befuddled by the sudden assault. Poppy yelled and rushed over. Kira Olsen, how dare you? Kira suddenly turned around. Her eyes were filled with a chilling look. She looked like a demon who had crawled up from hell, exuding an aura of bloodthirst. Poppy was frightened by her demeanor and froze in shock. What are you going to do? You ungrateful wretch. I'm your mother. Are you actually going to raise your hand against me? You unfilial beast. You're a heartless mother. so don't blame me for being unfilial. Kira's voice was cold, and she stressed each word. Stop casting judgment on my life. Otherwise, whatever you do to me, I'll make Isla suffer double the amount. She turned away from them and bowed deeply to Professor Miller. Thank you for looking after me over these 4 years. I'll be back. Having said this, she turned around without hesitation and left. It wasn't until Kira left the room that Poppy came back to her senses. She quickly rushed to Isla's side. Isla, are you okay? How dare that bitch hit you? That's outrageous. Isla touched her swollen cheeks, her body trembling with anger, but she calmly asked, where did she get the courage to do this? Poppy was stunned. Does Mr. Horton really take a liking to her? That's impossible. She's married. How can Mr. Horton like damaged goods? Isla felt the same. But thinking about Kira's enchantingly beautiful face, Isla suddenly felt unsure. Professor Miller was shocked by everything that had happened. He looked at Poppy incredulously. When he heard her foul language, he couldn't help but wonder, is she really Kira's mother, not Isla's? He didn't know if it was just his imagination, but Professor Miller suddenly felt that the two women in front of him looked somewhat alike. Asterisk. Just as Kira walked out of the school gate, Samuel called. Boss, I figured out. I know why Lewis claimed to be married, but doesn't know who you are. The school entrance bustled with people, their faces full of life and vitality. Kira walked beside her electric scooter, her lonely presence standing out among the crowd. She licked the swollen corner of her mouth with her tongue, her voice raspy. Speak. The Horton family appears prestigious, but their inner strife has been intense over the years. The old man favors the eldest son's family, intending to hand over the family business to the first branch. As the youngest son, Lewis Horton has been constantly suppressed. A few years ago, the old man arranged several untrustworthy individuals for Lewis to marry. The conflict was heated to the breaking point, until Lewis announced he had married a woman from an ordinary family, stopping further marital arrangements. Well, his wife is quite interesting. She has never appeared in public or attended any Horton family banquets. So to sum it up, the truth is, Samuel intended to create suspense, but Kira had already come to a realization. Understood. Have you found out his schedule and contact information yet? Samuel was taken aback and awkwardly said, I'll send you his schedule for the next few days, but I was unable to find his private number. Kira calmly replied, Don't worry. I'll find him in person. It was normal not to be able to find the private number of someone with Lewis Horton status. Samuel immediately became curious. He's usually surrounded by bodyguards and isn't easy to get close to. Do you plan to use force or let's stay low-key for now? Kira's lips curled up into a mischievous smile. Besides, I'm a woman. I can't just force myself in. Samuel didn't know what to say. Asterisk. Horton Group headquarters was located in the city center of Ocean Ion, a massive iconic skyscraper that showcased the extravagant wealth of the Horton family. Kira tidied her courier uniform and walked in holding a delivery box, telling the receptionist, This is a package from Mr. Horton. You must sign for it personally. The receptionist called the secretary's office before granting her approval to go upstairs. Kira stepped into an exclusive elevator and arrived at the top floor, the 88th. Stepping out of the elevator, a vast open space came into view. More than 100 people worked in the secretary's department, all serving one person, Lewis Horton. Following the secretary who had come to receive her, Kira smoothly arrived at the president's office. Upon knocking, a pleasant voice came from inside. Come in. Kira breathed a sigh of relief. Just as she thought she would successfully meet Lewis Horton, a tall and thin figure suddenly blocked her path. Tom Davis, the assistant, scrutinized her. Miss Olson, why are you here? The woman harassed his boss at the Olson family yesterday, but the boss tolerated her, and now she was shameless enough to impersonate a courier to disturb him. Tom's expression turned sour, and he called over 2 bodyguards. What's happening? Can anyone come to the top floor without getting their identity checked? Get her out immediately. Kira's face remained calm. What do you mean? Is Horton Group looking down on couriers? Tom sneered. Still trying to play the victim? We respect every job, but are you really a courier? Yes, I am. Do you think I'll believe this nonsense? If you're a courier, do you have a work permit? Just as Tom finished speaking, a work permit was thrust into his hands. Kira almost laughed. Of course I do. Tom was baffled. His face froze for a moment. He then chuckled, thinking he had figured it out. You probably just registered today, didn't you? The work permit was opened, and the registration date was marked clearly. Tom was stunned. 8 years ago. Was she really a courier? Is it prohibited to work and study at the same time? Kira said lazily, addressing the person at the other side of the door. Mr. Horton, are you ready to let me do my work now? A steady voice came from inside the room. Let her in. Kira gave Tom a provoking glance. He was about to burst with rage when she bypassed him and entered. Lewis's office was decorated in a simple yet luxurious style. The black, white, and gray color scheme imparted the room with a cold vibe. He sat behind his expansive desk, his black shirt sleeves rolled up to reveal a slender and muscular forearm. He had a pen in his hand. After signing the document in his hand, Lewis finally looked up, his dark eyes revealing no emotion. Kira pointed to the delivery form. Mr. Horton, please sign here. Her fingers were fair and slender, with a light layer of calluses on the tips, but the strength they showed was beautiful. It was just like herself. She seemed frail, yet always held her back straight. Lewis's eyes lingered on the swollen corner of her lips for a moment before he took the pen to sign. Just then, Kira suddenly spoke, her words shocking. Mr. Horton, you're not married, are you? He stopped writing and suddenly looked up. His chilly and penetrating gaze locked on her. An intangible pressure overwhelmed her. Kira knew she was right. The Civil Affairs Bureau required individuals to fill out personal information for marriage registration. It was impossible to make a mistake. Lewis announced to the public that he was married, but he didn't know her at all. After Samuel's investigation, the only explanation was that Lewis created a non-existent wife to shrug off the family's constant harassment to get him married. He hadn't been to the Civil Affairs Bureau, so he didn't know about their supposed marriage. Kira said seriously, Mr. Horton, I know my words may sound absurd, but we truly are married. Lewis slowly sat straight with a hint of amusement on his face. Miss Olson, don't waste your energy. Even if I weren't married, I wouldn't marry you just to spite Jake. Kira paused momentarily. Did he know about her past with Jake Horton and believe she was targeting him to take revenge? Was that why he wouldn't believe her? Kira tried to explain. My coming to you has nothing to do with Jake Horton. I'm here to ask you for a divorce. I'm not interested in your messy relationship. Lewis interrupted her, quickly signing the delivery form and handing it back. Stop harassing me, or I won't be so polite. Kira started to lose patience. Haven't you already done that? You've announced that you want me to disappear from Ocean Eye on. Raising his brows, Lewis started. When did I ever? He was cut off by the sudden ringing of a phone call. It was the special ringtone designated for his grandmother. He picked it up immediately, and the voice at the other end of the line was that of the caregiver. Mr. Horton, old Mrs. Horton has gone missing again. Lewis jumped to his feet and rushed toward the door. Kira wanted to follow him and clarify things further, but was stopped by Tom. Miss Olson, I suggest you stop here. Kira let out a sigh. Escorted out of the Horton group, she returned home at an unhurried pace. Just as she was about to enter her home, she glanced back and saw the old lady she had encountered once before. She was trailing closely behind her. Kira was dumbfounded. Just as she was about to speak, the old lady suddenly grabbed her wrist. My granddaughter-in-law, you won't leave me behind again. Editor, Henyi Translations. Kira decorated the place she rented in a neat and cozy way. She watched as the elderly woman sitting at the table drinking her third glass of water and said seriously, I really am not your granddaughter-in-law. Yes, you are. The old lady was very stubborn. She held her glass and gulped down another glass of water. Kira knew it was impossible to convince her, so she took out her phone and dialed that number from last time. The call was answered right away. Hello. Kira faintly recognized the man's voice and was about to say something when the old woman snatched the phone from her. Meanwhile, Lewis was leading a group of people searching for the old lady nearby. He seemed calm, but deep down, he was somewhat anxious. His grandmother not only had Alzheimer's, but at 87 years old, every organ in her body was beginning to decline, and her life could be in danger at any moment. The moment the phone rang, he picked it up immediately. Then he heard his grandmother's vigorous voice. "Little brat, don't come pick me up. I'm with my granddaughter-in-law." Granddaughter-in-law. The phone number was that of the girl from last time, so his grandmother was with her again now? Lewis's face darkened as he asked, "Where are you?" "I won't tell you. Do you think I can't find you that way? I forbid you from looking for me or sending anyone after me." Lewis rubbed his forehead and asked the attending physician in a low voice, "Can we bring old Mrs. Horton back by force?" The doctor shook his head and replied in a low voice, "Old Mrs. Horton should not be subjected to any stress right now. It's best to go along with her intentions. Besides, that girl last time doesn't seem to be a bad person." Lewis clenched his jaw and coaxed softly into the phone. "Grandma, I have to deliver your medicine. Don't bother. I brought my medicine with me. Don't worry. Just wait while I bring my granddaughter-in-law home." After saying this, the old woman hung up. She gave the phone back to Kira. Done. Kira was speechless. What kind of irresponsible family members were they? How could they just leave the elderly woman with a stranger? Just as she was about to call back, her received a WhatsApp notification. Someone had sent her a friend request using her phone number. The message read, "Grandson of the old lady." Kira accepted the friend request and saved his name in her contacts as Grandson. Grandson soon sent a message. "Could you please take care of my grandmother for a while? She hasn't been well recently and can't be stressed." Kira snorted and typed on her phone in an indifferent manner. "I can't. I don't run a charity." Before she could finish typing, she suddenly heard a noise coming from the kitchen. She quickly walked over to find the old lady boiling eggs. Kira casually asked, "Are you hungry? Some eggs won't be enough." No, the old lady turned around. Her wrinkled face had a kind smile on it. "Sweetheart, applying an egg to your face can reduce swelling." Kira was stunned. Perhaps she hadn't noticed it herself. Since she was hit by her biological mother today, she seemed unaffected, but in fact, she had assumed a detached demeanor that distanced her from the world. The old lady's words just now touched Kira, and a hint of warmth appeared in her eyes. She pursed her lips, then looked back at her phone. She saw a new message on her phone. "You've received a transfer of $50,000 from Grandson." Grandson wrote, "This is 1 week's living expenses. If it's not enough, just let me know." Kira looked at her input box, deleted the words she had just typed, and read the message. Okay. She didn't understand why she was suddenly meddling in this matter. That man was too generous. That must be it. Asterisk. Olsen family home. Both of Isla's cheeks were swollen, and the marks from the slaps were clearly visible. Her eyes were red and swollen as she sat on the sofa in the living room, silently shedding tears. Poppy lowered her head. "Isla, that little slut must be jealous that you're marrying into the Horton family. That's why she did this. Don't cry. When your dad comes back, I'll have him teach her a lesson." Mrs. Olsen dragged herself downstairs despite her sickness. Her voice was weak, but her tone was firm. "Kira isn't that kind of person. You must have done something to upset her first." Isla clenched her fists and lowered her head to say in a wrong tone, "It's my fault. I shouldn't have accepted Jake's proposal. She likes Jake so much. She must have gone after Mr. Horton because of it." Mrs. Olsen's pale face looked rather unwell. "How can that happen? Kira was very well-mannered when she was young. Otherwise, she wouldn't have been so stubborn to move out of the house." Poppy said resentfully, "She must have been led astray after she moved out. She's heartless. Today, not only did she hit Isla, but she also tried to hit me, her own mother." Mrs. Olsen still wouldn't believe it. Isla's eyes flickered, and she suddenly said, "Mom, it's because we haven't cared enough about her over the years." These words reminded Poppy. "That's because she doesn't come home. Mrs. Olsen, you used to be so good to her, but she doesn't come to see you. She's such an ungrateful wretch. She doesn't remember your kindness. She's a cold-hearted person through and through." Mrs. Olsen was taken aback. She had always been unbiased towards Kira and had fed her by hand as she grew up, so she had feelings for Kira. When the child moved out, she told Kira she should come back to visit when she had time. However, after all these years, Kira hadn't come home once. Had the child really grown ungrateful after growing up? Isla saw Mrs. Olson's hesitation and was satisfied. She changed the subject and said coyly, "Mom, can you invite Drive South to serve as a mentor at Ocean Ion University?" Mrs. Olson immediately refused sternly. "Isla, we can't take advantage of someone's kindness. Besides, Drive South has done more than enough for our family business over the years." Isla wasn't surprised by her words and smiled. "Mom, that's not what I mean. Ocean Ion University is the best university around here. Maybe Drive South wants to go there too? We could take the chance to help him build a relationship with the school, which would also be a way of repaying Drive South for all his years of help." Mrs. Olson found the argument reasonable and opened WhatsApp on her phone. "Then I'll ask him." Isla sat next to Mrs. Olson and blinked. "Drive South has done so much for our family, and his debt has been repaid long ago. Shouldn't our family host a dinner in his honor? Wouldn't it be better to ask him in person then?" Drive South has always been obliging to Mrs. Olson. Isla believed that when he came, she could propose that she wanted to be his postgraduate student. Drive South would certainly not refuse. Mrs. Olson was convinced and sent Drive South a message on WhatsApp. "South, do you have time to come by the house?" When Kira saw the message, her heart skipped a beat. Why would Mrs. Olson suddenly ask to see her? Was it because her health was deteriorating? Thinking of Mrs. Olson's cough, Kira got up. "I'm free. Should I come now?" Kira clenched her jaw, feeling utterly anxious. Just as she was about to leave, Mrs. Olson sent her a WhatsApp message. "There's no rush. Are you working this Saturday? I'd like to buy you lunch." Only then did Kira understand that her concern had made her anxious. Lunch at the Olsons? A bitter smile crept onto her lips. 10 years ago, when she moved out of the Olson residence, she went back the first weekend. She entered the backyard and watched through the glass window as Mrs. Olson, Isla, and Taylor Olson laughed and chatted. The joyous smile on Mrs. Olson's face was one she'd never seen before. "Poppy said, do you see that? Without you around, they're a real family of 3. If you really care about Mrs. Olson, you shouldn't stay away from her." Eventually, Kira left quietly. She only returned on Mrs. Olson's birthday each year, leaving a small gift at the doorstep. After so many years, it was probably time to see her again, right? Kira responded to the message. "I should be the one buying. Let's meet this Saturday at 6 p.m. See you there." She sent over the location of a restaurant. Visiting the Olson house could cause unnecessary disputes. It would be better to meet outside, where she could have a quiet chat with Mrs. Olson and check on her health. Mrs. Olson said, "All right, see you then." After ending the chat with Mrs. Olson, Kira saw several new messages from grandson. "As my grandmother ages, she's becoming more like a child with a hot temperament. You need a lot of patience. She has trouble sleeping. Her nights are restless. She needs to take 2 blue pills a day, 1 in the morning and 1 at night." There were 5 messages in total. The last one read, "The above is forwarded from our family doctor's instructions. I'm grateful for your help. If Granny doesn't feel well, please contact me immediately." Upon reading this, Kira quietly entered the bedroom and sent a short video to grandson. Asterisk, not far down the street, 2 vehicles were parked discreetly. The first minivan was fully equipped and looked like a small suite. Lewis was dressed in a black suit and was sitting on the couch, working on his computer. Old Mrs. Horton's family doctor sat in the corner, his face stern, ready for any emergencies. Changing her environment could disrupt old Mrs. Horton's sleep, which was crucial for her frail body. Even slight negligence could risk her life. The car at the back was loaded with emergency equipment, ready to leap into action if something happened, as they were close to Mrs. Horton's location. Lewis was lost in these thoughts when his phone buzzed with a new WhatsApp message. Upon checking it, his usually impassive face looked a little surprised. The family doctor immediately asked, "Did something happen to Mrs. Horton?" Lewis pressed his lips together and showed in the video. It depicted old Mrs. Horton sleeping soundly in a bed with a floral sheet. She was even snoring a little. It was only 9 o'clock in the evening. Usually, They would be grateful if Mrs. Horton could fall asleep before 1 in the morning. The family doctor looked astonished. Mrs. Horton behaves differently around this young lady. If she can always stay with Mrs. Horton, I believe Mrs. Horton's health will significantly improve. Having reached an advanced age, Mrs. Horton was physically weak, and sleep was a top priority. Lewis clenched his jaw, his eyes brooding. The next day, before setting out, Kira bid the old lady, who looked well-rested after a long night of sleep, farewell. I've asked Samuel to keep you company. He'll be here soon. Okay. The little old lady nodded obediently. Granddaughter-in-law, where are you going? To meet someone. Who are you going to meet? Do you have to go? Yes. If she didn't go to see Lewis Horton now, he would find out about their marriage when he goes to register his own marriage. But her company was waiting to go public, and Kira urgently needed the divorce. With a dramatic wave of her hand, the little old lady proclaimed, "Then I'll have my grandson help you schedule a meeting. My grandson has a great deal of influence." Kira smiled. "Granny, I'm afraid your grandson won't do." The Horton family was the wealthiest in Ocean Isle. Even though Granny's family was well off, could they possibly be wealthier than the Hortons? She rode her electric bike to the Horton group. Lewis's schedule was quite monotonous. He was either working or commuting with no leisure time at all. Before Kira could say anything at the front desk, the receptionist said, "It's you again. Mr. Davis has made it clear. Mr. Horton isn't expecting any parcels today. You're not allowed upstairs." Kira replied, "I'm not here to deliver a parcel. The receptionist interrupted her impatiently. "Then do you have an appointment?" "Without one, you can't go up." As Kira was about to reply, she saw the receptionist's eyes light up. Her impatient expression vanished instantly as she warmly greeted the person behind Kira. "Miss Olson, you're here." Frowning, Kira turned around to see Isla. With a gracious and composed demeanor, Isla gave the receptionist a gentle smile. "I'm here to see Jake." Her gaze swept over Kira as she added, "But I forgot to make an appointment." "Miss Olson, what are you talking about? With your stature, when have you ever needed an appointment? Mr. Jake would be overjoyed to see you." The receptionist swiped her card to unlock the entrance. "Please come in." However, Isla turned to Kira, sighing reproachfully. "Kira, the Horton Group isn't a place anyone can just waltz into. If you want to pester Mr. Horton, don't make things difficult for the receptionist." Kira was perplexed. When had she ever made things difficult for the receptionist? However, the young lady at the receptionist's desk frowned. Mr. Davis merely said not to let this woman go upstairs, but didn't mention the reason why. Was it because of that? The receptionist showed a scornful expression, her face full of annoyance. Some people really don't know their place. Do they think their good looks can let them climb up the social ladder? They don't even know where they are. "Miss, could you keep your distance and stop disturbing my work, or I'll have to call security." Kira lifted her eyebrow, planning to say something, but seeing the receptionist's look of disdain, she gave a sarcastic smile. "You're the one who won't let me go upstairs." Meanwhile, upstairs, after finishing an urgent document, Lewis picked up his phone and looked at the message from the Need Iron at the top of his chat list. It was the woman's weird nickname on WhatsApp. He sent a message. "Hello, how is Granny today?" She replied quickly. "Everything was fine when I left the house." Lewis frowned. "Did you go to work?" "Iron deficient element. You could say that." Lewis looked displeased. She had left Granny alone at home? But since she wasn't his hired caregiver, he had no right to dictate that she only take care of his grandmother and not go anywhere else. Currently, he was the one who needed her help. Lewis thought for a moment. "Where are you now? I want to meet you and talk to you about Granny." Need Iron didn't refuse and directly sent an address on WhatsApp. Upon seeing it, Lewis's eyes narrowed slightly. Wasn't it the address of the Horton Group's main entrance? He got up and headed downstairs. The receptionist personally escorted Isla to the elevator. While waiting for the elevator, Isla noticed that Kira hadn't left and was sitting on the couch in the lobby, obviously not intending to leave. How shameless. Isla glanced at the receptionist. "You guys really have it tough. I will mention to Jake about giving you a raise." Joy appeared on the receptionist's face. "Thank you, Miss Olson." Please feel free to instruct me if you need anything. Isla sighed. My little sister is really stubborn. Please don't let her wait until Mr. Horton comes. After saying these words, Isla entered the elevator. As the elevator doors closed, she could see the receptionist walking toward Kira. The corner of Isla's mouth curved into a triumphant smile. Did Kira really think she would get Mr. Horton's attention just because of her good looks? How foolish. The world of the wealthy is ruled by interest, not by emotions. Jake had pursued Kira for 4 years and had been so in love with her. Still, he ended up proposing to Isla. All of this happened because Isla had what was needed to marry into the Horton family. The elevator quickly reached the 68th floor. When Isla entered the office, she had returned to her usual serene and gentle demeanor. Jake was in a suit and tie, his youthful naivety from school days replaced by a hint of sharpness. His gaze fell on her face, and he casually asked, "What happened to your face?" Isla lowered her gaze. "Kira hit me." Jake warned her, looking displeased. "I've told you before. Don't provoke her." Isla said, "It was my fault." She moved to Jake's side. "Jake, I heard your new project is about renewable energy." Jake looked at her seriously. "Yes, if the Horton Group cannot come up with the latest technology, we'll be surpassed in the future." Isla smiled and said, "I made a dining arrangement with Drive South and my mother. Shall I ask Drive South to join your research and development team?" Jake's expression eased up. "That will be great." His attitude shifted. He draped his arm around Isla's waist, gently caressing her cheek. Indeed, Kira was so unruly. "Does it still hurt? I'll blow on it for you." Isla lowered her eyelids, pretending to act shy. But inside, she was laughing coldly. With connections like Drive South, what could Kira use to compete with her? As for who Jake really loved, she didn't care. All she wanted was to marry into the Horton family and become Mrs. Jake Horton. Even if her real identity was revealed in the future, her wealth and status would be secured. Asterisk. In the lobby downstairs, Kira sent her address to grandson. The old lady was now living at her place, so it indeed made sense to clarify the responsibilities with the old lady's family ahead of time to avoid future trouble. She was about to arrange a meeting time with the person when her surroundings dimmed. The receptionist stood in front of her with 2 security guards and said arrogantly, "You cannot sit here. You're hindering my work. Please leave immediately." Kira's expression turned icy. The sofas in the lobby were for anyone to sit on as they pleased. Moreover, she wasn't making a sound. How could she be affecting the receptionist's work? Kira leaned back lazily. "If your work is so easily affected, perhaps you should find a private office." The receptionist stammered. Enraged, she ordered the security guards, "Kick her out immediately." Before the security guards could even move, the noisy lobby suddenly grew quiet. The doors of the CEO's private elevator slowly opened, and a reserved Lewis walked out alongside Tom Davis. He only glanced over and then looked around, seemingly searching for someone. Tom noticed the situation and walked over briskly. His brows were furrowed as he looked at Kira. "You again?" The receptionist wasted no time in playing the victim. "Mr. Davis, she said she had a parcel to deliver to Mr. Horton. I wouldn't let her, so she refuses to leave." Kira replied flatly, "I told you I wasn't delivering a parcel." The receptionist scoffed. "Mr. Davis, did you hear that?" She didn't even bother to pretend. She outright admitted she wanted to go upstairs to find someone. "Since I refuse to let her go up, she's causing a ruckus here. I'll have security escort her out now." Kira said nonchalantly, "Which regulation of Horton Group states that I cannot sit on this couch?" The receptionist was speechless. Tom impatiently told Kira, "Well, just sit here then. Anyway, the boss won't even pay you any attention." He turned to the receptionist and said, somewhat annoyed, "The more pressing issue is that the air conditioning on the top floor is broken." The repairman said he had already arrived and was stopped by the front desk from going upstairs. "Can you explain what's going on?" The receptionist was taken aback. "I haven't seen any repairman." Tom frowned. "Really?" The receptionist quickly nodded. "I've been here the whole time, and moreover, the top floor isn't something I would take lightly. How could I possibly stop them? Tom took out his phone. I'll call them and see if they went to the wrong place. Before he could dial, he heard a lazy voice. They didn't. Tom was taken aback. Kira smiled. It's true. The receptionist didn't let me go upstairs. Tom Davis was baffled. The receptionist didn't know what to say. The two were both stunned. After a moment, Tom finally understood. You were that repairman? That can't be possible. A work permit was handed to him. The date on it was indeed 9 years ago. Tom couldn't believe it. Is this another one of your part-time jobs? Kira didn't deny it, her eyes moving toward Lewis Horton, who wasn't far away. I wasn't allowed to speak. They wanted to kick me out and even falsely accused me of causing a scene here. Mr. Horton, you have quite a high and mighty receptionist. The receptionist nervously looked at Lewis. Mr. Horton. Lewis was expressionless and said coldly, You're fired. The receptionist's face paled instantly, but she didn't dare to beg for forgiveness. Lewis then looked solemnly at Kira. Tom had investigated the woman. She moved out from the Olson residence in middle school, and ever since then, she had been making her living by working. Yesterday, she was a delivery girl, and today, she was a repairwoman. How many jobs had she taken? Life was extremely difficult for her, yet her back was always upright. How could such a defiant woman degrade herself by persistently bothering him? Having thought about it, the slight admiration Lewis started to feel for her instantly disappeared, replaced by annoyance. Miss Olson, are you satisfied now? Kira nodded, standing up. Mr. Horton, did you check with the Civil Affairs Bureau? Lewis didn't respond to her and only told Tom coldly, Take her upstairs to work. And remember, I don't want to see her again. Kira was dumbfounded. Tom pulled at her arm. Miss Olson, let's go. I would advise you to quit it. Even if you put a lot of effort in and finally get to enter the top floor, our boss still won't give you a second glance. Although she really was a delivery person and a repairwoman, was she really here at the Horton Group to work? Everyone knew the truth. Lewis no longer paid her any more attention. Taking out his phone, he called Need Iron on WhatsApp. At the same time, Kira's mobile phone rang. When Kira's mobile phone rang, Lewis was slightly taken aback. He turned to look at Kira. Need Iron was her. Kira answered the phone, hello. But Lewis heard no sound in the receiver. He looked at his phone and found out that the line was busy. The voice call didn't get through. He was overthinking it. At that moment, several people in the lobby were on the phone. It was impossible to tell which one was her. Just then, Need Iron sent a message. Sorry, I'm in the middle of something. Let's reschedule again. At the rooftop, Kira was answering Samuel's phone call while texting grandson. Samuel gloated, Boss, are you all right? It's been many years since you last did repair work, right? Kira said lightly, If you are free, help me find out Lewis's private number so I don't have to stalk him over and over again. If she could get his number, she could call him every hour to remind him to check with the Civil Affairs Bureau. With so many phone calls, even if he didn't believe this absurd thing, he would check it out. Samuel immediately complained. How was it possible to find his private number? Don't you know that there is no information about him online? It took a lot of effort to find out his personal schedule. That's because you're useless. Kira hung up and saw Tom showing a contemptuous look. Miss Olson, my boss's private phone number is confidential. Ordinary people can't get it. Kira teased him. Do you believe that one day, not only will I have your boss's phone number, but also his WhatsApp? Divorce procedures were a bit troublesome, and she would definitely be in contact more often with Lewis in the future. Tom snickered. What a daydream. As soon as Tom finished speaking, Kira's phone rang. Grandson sent a WhatsApp message. Call me anytime when you're free. Asterisk. 10 minutes later, Kira fixed the air conditioner. She clapped her hands together. The air conditioner's filter has been used for too long and accumulated dirt, which affected the cooling function. It's fine after I replaced it. Seeing how swiftly and easily she solved the problem, Tom didn't feel so hostile toward her anymore. To avoid her going after Mr. Horton again, Tom personally escorted her downstairs. At the entrance, he said meaningfully, Miss Olson, from now on there will be no signed delivery, and no electrical appliances will be damaged on the rooftop. Kira knew what he meant, but she just grinned. Well, see you at noon. She turned around and left. Tom was perplexed. He didn't take her words to heart and returned to the rooftop. At noon, Lewis had a lunch meeting. He wasn't fond of socializing, but since he had returned to his home country, he needed to respect Kira's culture of feasting, even though such occasions weren't frequent. Tom accompanied him the entire time. They came to a private restaurant, and noticing the waiters and waitresses in uniform, Tom suddenly became more vigilant. Wasn't waitressing the most common part-time job chosen by students who wanted to work while studying? He looked around, observing almost all the waiters and waitresses. Only after not spotting Kira did he breathe a sigh of relief. But he quickly found his own actions laughable. Kira was already a delivery worker and a repair technician. How could she take up another job? How is it that she scared him like this with her simple words, "See you at noon"? Feeling relaxed, Tom entered the private room just as the food was served, and the head chef came to pay respect. "Everyone, are you satisfied with today's meal?" At the sound of the familiar female voice, Tom went stiff. He did a double take, as if he had seen a ghost, and saw Kira standing at the door with a chef's hat. A soft smile tugged on her lips as she introduced the day's dishes. Finally, she walked over to Lewis and whispered, "Mr. Horton, you should go check the Civil Affairs Bureau." Lewis was speechless. He clenched his jaw, a hint of consternation crossing his usually calm face. Tom was even more shocked as he stared at her. "You're the chef? You also have a certification for that?" "Yup." Kira reached for her waist pocket to pull out her chef license, but she accidentally dropped 1, 2, 3, a total of 5 different work licenses. Tom swallowed hard. "You got 5 part-time jobs?" Kira said no. Tom breathed a sigh of relief, only to hear her calmly say, "There are some that I didn't bring with me." Tom was shocked. Kira, with a smiling face, turned toward Lewis. "Mr. Horton, I could do any job. I don't think you would want me to keep bothering you. So why not check with the Civil Affairs Bureau?" Lewis's face remained taut. The woman had amorous eyes and always spoke as if she was flirting. She was attracting the attention of the rest of the people at the dinner table. Lewis's face darkened instantly, still ignoring Kira. He turned to Tom and said, "Go check it out." Kira rejoiced inwardly. Was this man finally persuaded by her? But then she heard his cold words. "Who leaked my schedule?" Tom took a step forward, again blocking Kira. "Miss Olson, please leave immediately." When Kira was once again driven out of the private room, she sighed while standing outside. Why wouldn't this man just believe her? Despite her patience, she was getting a little annoyed at this point. She didn't leave and simply waited outside. When had she ever been treated like this before in recent years? The more she thought, the angrier she became. Kira took out her mobile phone, wanting to find someone to rant about, but found none in her WhatsApp contacts. She composed a post for her story. In the private room, everyone ate their meals while flattering Lewis. He was growing impatient with this, so he took out his mobile phone and pretended to be busy with something. He clicked into his story out of boredom and saw Need Iron posted something 2 minutes ago. "Don't be angry. One should be patient with little brats." Lewis was slightly taken aback. He immediately texted Need Iron. "How old are you exactly? You sound like you already have a grandson. He can't let an elderly woman take care of his grandmother." Need Iron replied with a... Need Iron wrote, "Are you talking about my story? I was cursing someone. Someone who never understands what I say." Lewis was speechless. Only then did he realize that he had made a fool of himself. So, he sent a message to hide his embarrassment. "The brain is a daily necessity. That person might have taken it as a decoration." Need Iron said, "I like that. Keep it coming." Lewis pushed up his lips into an amused smirk. "Only human beings are worth our mockery. Ignore him." Need Iron said, "Since you're so articulate, I'll give Granny an extra meal tonight. Does she have any dietary restrictions?" Lewis wrote, "The doctor said to eat less sweet and spicy food, but anything else goes." Need Iron said, "No problem." Their chat always gave Lewis the feeling of speaking to an old friend. It was very comforting. He suddenly asked, "Can I visit Granny tonight?" Need Iron said, "Of course. You're always welcome." Afterward, she sent a detailed address complete with her room number. Lewis took note of the address and replied, "Sure. Sorry for disturbing you." He had to bring a family doctor to check on his grandmother tonight, or else he would be worried. Need Iron didn't reply again. He could tell she didn't like polite formalities. Lewis quietly made note of her little quirk. "Mr. Horton, are you messaging Mrs. Horton?" Someone nearby teased him. You can't hide the smile on your face. The corner of Lewis's lips tightened stiffly. He put away his phone and turned to the one who spoke. After Lewis became the CEO of the Horton Group, the mysterious Mrs. Horton made people suspect if she even existed. So, he didn't deny it. The person took his silence as admission and flattered him. "Mr. Horton, you really are upright and devoted to Mrs. Horton. You were unmoved even by the attractive chef just now. You are a role model for us all." With this, others chimed in. "We're very curious about Mrs. Horton. What sort of person could capture Mr. Horton's heart? Old Mrs. Horton must be pleased with her, right?" Everyone knew vaguely that Lewis didn't get on well with the Horton family, except for old Mrs. Horton. Lewis lowered his gaze and simply replied, "Well, yes. Granny quite likes her." Outside, bored out of her mind, Kira was waiting when a familiar voice rang out. "Kira." She turned to face a familiar, handsome face. Jake, wearing a black suit, was known for his gentle and caring demeanor, but now he was looking at her with a stormy expression. "So you're here." Kira bit her lip. During her university years, she was always on her own. She was a loner. Jake was outgoing and cheerful and often stayed with her, making him her only friend. But their statuses now made their relationship awkward. She hesitated. "Is there something you need?" Jake sneered coldly. "Isla informed me about your background. Why did you keep it from me? I despise mistresses and love children the most, yet I courted you, an outsider like that, for 4 years. Was it fun?" A pain, like someone clutching her heart tightly, swept over Kira. She had always wondered why Jake, who had promised her a surprise at the graduation ceremony, had proposed to Isla instead. So this was why. His parents weren't in a harmonious relationship, and apparently, he had a stepsister who was an illegitimate child. Just by revealing her true identity, Isla was able to shatter 4 years of friendship. Kira took a step back from him, widening the distance between them. However, Jake took a step forward and challenged her. "Don't you have any explanation for me?" "An explanation for what? Why was she an illegitimate child? Why did she decide to be born from Poppy's womb?" Kira scoffed, "No." She turned to leave. If their paths diverged, don't force it. If he looked down on her background, she was better off not having him as a friend. Her determined expression irritated Jake. As he watched her walk further from him, a sudden panic seized him, and he grabbed her by the arm. "You can't leave." Kira looked back at him. "Is there something else?" Jake looked tense. He felt that Kira's distant, cold demeanor was ruthless. His anger flared up, mixed with a strange feeling of resentment. He was the one who let go first. So why did it still feel as though he was the one being abandoned? He mocked her. "You're still working here, which means you are yet to find formal employment. How about working as my assistant? You've done it before." Kira pulled away from his grasp, coldly rejecting him. "I'm afraid I can't handle that." Jake, however, insisted. "There's no need for you to do anything. I have an apartment near the company. You only need to live there and take care of my daily needs. I'll pay you $1,000 a month. Is that enough?" Kira's gaze turned frosty, her tone like ice. "So, you want me to become your mistress?" Jake laughed coldly. "You could definitely handle that, considering your mother was a mistress. You've seen it firsthand, so it's in your blood. I trust you to be professional." Slap. Kira slapped him right across the face. "Jake, enough is enough." Jake was taken aback by the slap, but he laughed. His gaze turning shaded, he warned her. "Kira, believe it or not if I don't want you, no one in Ocean Ion will dare want you. You won't be able to find a job or a husband. You'd only end up as a plaything for others. If that's the case, why not choose me? At least, I might be a little more caring because we are old classmates. I'll give you time to consider. If you change your mind, call me anytime. You have my number." Leaving these words, Jake walked off. Kira gave a self-deprecating smile. When she turned around, she saw Lewis standing in the doorway of his private room. Lewis didn't like social engagements. Finally finding an excuse, he intended to leave with Tom, but didn't expect to witness the scene in the hallway on his way out. His gaze was perspicuous, revealing no emotion. Tom clicked his tongue sympathetically at Kira. I was wondering why you didn't find a steady job after graduating from college and continued working multiple part-time jobs. So is this all because of Jake? Kira was dumbfounded. Tom sighed again. You are hounding Mr. Horton because you have no choice, right? After all, there's hardly anyone who dares defy the Horton family in Oceania. Kira's amorous eyes narrowed, and she didn't refute his claim. They were getting along after 2 days for the first time. Tom pitifully said, Boss, why don't we help her out a little? She seems pitiful. Kira felt a glimmer of hope. Exactly. Help the pitiful child and go to the Civil Affairs Bureau to complete the divorce procedure. Her company was still waiting to go public. But as soon as she had these thoughts, she heard Lewis say coldly, Why should I make Jake unhappy for an irrelevant person? He walked past Kira. She was pitiful. Though the girl looked naive, there was a suppressed cunningness and joy in her eyes. There was no pitifulness at all. She was more offensive than pitiful. Moreover, since she managed to get his personal schedule, it proved that she was quite crafty. The corridor quickly became silent again. Kira stood in place, feeling that Lewis was cold-hearted. Oh well, grandson was right. She should be angry at people, not him. Kira ventured outside the restaurant, slowly making her way back home on her electric bicycle. She had an elderly at home to look after and couldn't stay out for long. She would try to find him again tomorrow. That night, Lewis left work on time and arrived in an old district on the outskirts of the city. He held a bag of fruit in his hand, found the address on WhatsApp, and knocked on the door. The familiar voice of his grandmother soon came from inside. Coming. The door to the room was open. Lewis looked at old Mrs. Horton and found her complexion healthy. After that, he took a careful look around. The room was neat and clean, and the small 2-bedroom apartment was very cozy. The table was set with 4 dishes of light, nutritious, and well-balanced food, which was suitable for the elderly. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. Was someone taking a shower? There was a frosted glass door, where a graceful silhouette of a young woman could be faintly seen. Lewis recoiled, feeling somewhat uncomfortable. The family doctor wanted to enter the room, but was stopped by him. Lewis steered sideways to block the doctor's view. Give me the equipment and wait in the car. The family doctor nodded and left, thoughtfully closing the door. Lewis quickly measured old Mrs. Horton's blood pressure, blood sugar, and heart rate. Perhaps it was because she had had a good sleep the night before. All the readings were incredibly healthy. The old lady said proudly, My granddaughter-in-law takes really good care of me. Seeing is believing, and Lewis was at last relieved. His gaze moved to the direction of the bathroom again. Then he quickly collected his equipment. Since you're all right, I'll leave now. The old lady was startled. Aren't you going to have dinner here? The food made by my granddaughter-in-law is delicious. It's not very appropriate for me to stay. Lewis put down the medical equipment. I'll leave it here. The old lady thought for a while. Take it. My granddaughter-in-law won't know how to use it. I don't want Dr. Frank to come here. I want him to come and check on me every day. She thought that if her grandson came over every day, wouldn't that mean he could see his wife every day? After nurturing some feelings between them, they could end their separation status. The old lady believed that she might have the prospect of having a great-grandson. Just when Lewis wanted to say something, the sound of running water suddenly stopped in the bathroom. He stood up quickly, grabbed his medical box, and hurriedly left. I need to go. Come again tomorrow. All right. The moment he shut the door, Kira, with fully dressed clothes and newly washed hair, came out from the bathroom. Hey, where's your grandson? He left, saying it's not very appropriate. He's too reserved and often has a straight face. Granddaughter-in-law, is it because of this that you don't like him? He can change. I am not your granddaughter-in-law. You are. Kira gave up. Having been living together for a couple of days, she found that old Mrs. Horton was very kind and let her do anything she wanted, but the old lady was particularly stubborn on this matter. She dried her hair and dined with old Mrs. Horton. At 9 o'clock in the evening, Kira lit up the calming incense, and old Mrs. Horton obediently lay down in bed and quickly fell asleep. Kira dutifully sent a video to grandson. The other party quickly replied, Grandma is very healthy, thanks. Kira said, "You're welcome." Grandson said, "How did it go with that little brat today? Do you need help?" Kira understood that he was referring to the matter she posted in her story. She smiled and replied, "That won't be necessary." Lewis was in the RV when he saw this reply, and his stern face softened a little. This young woman didn't know his identity, but simply agreed to take care of his grandmother, and she did her best. She also didn't take advantage of his gratitude by asking him for help. She wasn't like Kira, who barely knew him, yet she relentlessly pestered and exploited him to intimidate Jake. The difference between the two was clear. Lewis sent a message. "I owe you a favor. Feel free to ask me for help in the future." Kira didn't take his words to heart. The only help she needed at the moment was a divorce, and only Lewis could give her that. Grandson couldn't help. The following morning, Kira took the old lady to the largest luxury mall in Oceanion to shop for clothes. The old lady's grandson was generous, and she was obviously from a rich family. Kira couldn't let her feel that she was mistreated. As expected, once she entered the shop, the old lady seemed very familiar with it. Old Mrs. Horton loves clothes from a certain brand, and the brand manager would send the latest styles to her each quarter so that she could make her selections in advance. It was the first time that she shopped in the store, and she found the experience very novel. Not too far away, Isla leaned on Taylor's arm and spoke affectionately. "Dad, you are so busy. You really don't need to take me out shopping." Taylor smiled indulgently. "Tonight is your first time visiting the Horton family. Gifts to the elders can't be overlooked, especially the old lady." Isla asked, "The grandma is said to be 87 years old. Why does the Horton family value her so much?" Taylor lowered his voice. "The first branch of the Horton family and Lewis have always been secretly competing for control of the family. Old Mrs. Horton has 20% of the shares. If you can win her over, your position in the Horton family will be secure." Isla immediately asked, "Does the old lady have any preferences?" Taylor remembered the old lady he had seen from a distance 2 years ago and said, "She has dementia and is a bit moody, but she adores Hermes clothes. You could try to please her in that regard. Even if you can't get her to like you, never let her dislike you." Isla nodded immediately. The two of them entered Hermes. Taylor sat on the sofa, while Isla began her shopping spree. When she came to the changing room area, she noticed Kira and an old lady. The old lady walked out of the fitting room. "Granddaughter-in-law, what do you think of this?" "Granddaughter-in-law? Is this old lady the grandmother of her hooligan husband?" Isla sneered, seeing Kira shaking her head. Old Mrs. Horton tried on another one, but Kira shook her head again. Old Mrs. Horton sighed. "Why don't the clothes look nice?" Disdain flashed on Isla's face. "Not nice." It was obvious that they couldn't afford it. She walked over. "Kira, what a coincidence. Is this your husband's grandmother?" Kira's face darkened, and she ignored Isla. Isla looked at the old lady again. "Hello, Grandma. Have you never bought clothes from this brand before? Every piece of clothing here is very expensive and requires a certain level of style. It's not suitable for ordinary people." Old Mrs. Horton was furious and clutched her chest. "Are you saying I'm not stylish? How can you be so impolite?" Kira quickly held old Mrs. Horton's arm, fearing that she might become angry. Isla continued, "Kira, your grandma is more suited for wholesale markets, better value for money. Get lost." Kira spoke sharply. The commotion here caught Taylor's attention. He walked over. "What's happening?" Isla played the victim. "Dad, Kira, and her husband's grandmother were trying on many clothes without buying them. So I made a little suggestion." Understanding what she meant, Taylor frowned at Kira. Then he recognized the old lady that Kira was supporting and was immediately shocked. The nearly 90-year-old woman's skin was loose and saggy. Her once youthful features were no longer distinguishable. She lay with her wizened hand on her chest, as though she could drop dead at any moment. Taylor thought he was overthinking things. A person of old Mrs. Horton's status would surely never step into a shop like this. Worried that Islam might cause trouble with the old woman, he said to Kira sternly, "Enough. Your sister only wants what's best for you. Isn't making such a fuss and causing a scene here embarrassing for you?" The old lady immediately turned to Kira. "Dear, is this your father?" Kira averted her eyes. The term father was foreign to her, and her feelings toward him were complicated. As a child in the Olsen family, Poppy Hill wouldn't let her get near Taylor. The tiny child she once was used to hide in corners, stealing glances at him from afar. She watched him beam at Isla, swinging her around his arms. His towering figure seemed godlike to her. So, during those countless days and nights when Poppy beat her and didn't even allow her to eat, she often daydreamed that her father might swoop down to rescue her from the misery, just once. But he never did. He never showed any concern for her. Even on the few occasions that they ran into each other, he only reminded her to listen to your mother. The Olsen family dynamics were weird. Everyone seemed resigned to Poppy's presence. But except for Mrs. Olsen, no one could accept Kira at all. Kira didn't respond to the old lady. She turned her attention back to a few dresses she had just tried on, picked out the best of a bad bunch, and handed it to the sales associate, ready to pay and leave. Seeing this, Taylor said, "I know you're broke. Let me pay for this dress. Consider it a present for my mother-in-law." But Isla suddenly chimed in. "Dad, I've just gone around the store. This dress is the best for a gift." A sales associate standing nearby immediately said with a smile, "Miss, you have excellent taste. This dress is pure handmade embroidery. It's one of a kind in all of Oceania. Why don't you consider something else?" Upon hearing this, Taylor's eyes lit up. "Let's choose this one." He turned to Kira. "This dress is for your sister. You can pick another one." Kira's eyes flashed with an indiscernible emotion. "Why should I? Your sister is going to visit the Hortons, and this is a gift for old Mrs. Horton. So I have to give it to her." Taylor scolded Kira. "Can't your husband's grandmother just wear something else? Is she more important than old Mrs. Horton?" Kira remained resolute. "I'll take this dress. Can't you be mature for once? Must you compete with your sister?" Kira felt it laughable. How did a dress that she had her eyes on first become a matter of her fighting with Isla over it? Taylor continued, "How about this? I'll give you $30,000 for the dress, which is worth $1,000. Consider it as part of your dowry." Isla chimed in with a feigned, kind-hearted voice. "Kira, you haven't found a job after graduation. You better take Dad's offer quickly. Don't miss out on such a good deal just because you're angry with me." In the end, Taylor threatened Kira. "If you insist on getting this dress, I'm not going to pay for you." True to his seasoned businessman form, he had resorted to threats and bribes to buy Isla a dress. What a good father he was. Kira had no desire to continue arguing with him. She was about to pay for the dress with her debit card when the old lady who had been silent until now suddenly held her hand back. "Dear, I don't want this dress. It's not nice." Kira looked at her. "Grandma, none of the others suit you either." The old lady was stubborn. "Well, in that case, I don't want any of them." She had already bought all the suitable clothes for this season. All that was left in the store were the ones she didn't want. How could there be any good ones? Also, according to their conversation, was her granddaughter's sister planning to gift this dress to old Mrs. Horton? Old Mrs. Horton, that sounded familiar. Who was she again? The old lady was a bit foggy. Seeing this, Kira didn't insist. She assured the old woman, "Then let's not buy it." Only then did Taylor look satisfied. "If only you had been so sensible earlier, it would have saved us all that talk. Next time, if you can't afford it, don't go into stores like this. You wouldn't want to embarrass the Olsen family if you get spotted by acquaintances." Isla gave a dismissive laugh. Just moments ago, she was all sugar and spice with the elderly woman. Now she was showing her true colors. She couldn't afford the dress in the first place. Isla had the store employee pack up the dress and then turned to Kira. "Thank you for giving in to me. Once I marry into the Horton family, I'll help you and your husband find a good job." Kira didn't pay her any mind. She was ready to leave with the old lady. "Wait." Taylor intercepted her, offering a check. "Here's the $30,000 I promised you as your dowry. It should help with your living expenses." Kira was taken aback. "There's no need. Do you think it's too little? The Olsen company belongs to Isla's mother, and it'll be left to Isla in the future. This is the most I can give you." Taylor handed out the check as if he was doing charity. "With this $30,000, you and your husband could open a small stall to make a living. In the future, just live a simple life and don't hope for things that aren't meant for you. Kira initially thought Taylor might have a shred of fatherly love for her, but now she only saw the scorn. What is it meant for me? Like shopping at this kind of mall? Or trying to seduce Mr. Horton? Taylor warned her, if you bring disaster upon yourself, don't involve the Olsen family. Today, the store staff didn't dare to offend such an old lady. That's why they didn't make a fuss over you. But if you offend Mr. Horton, it won't simply be defused by the old woman playing hardball. Kira finally gave up on him. Rest assured, I have nothing to do with the Olsen family anymore. She left without looking back. As they were leaving, the old lady held Kira's hand. Dear, your father and your sister are really wicked. From now on, my grandson will have your back, and make sure no one looks down on you. A warmth spread in Kira's chest. All right, the old lady grumbled again. Give that ugly dress to that old Mrs. Horton they mentioned. I don't want it. Just as she finished speaking, her phone rang. She answered, and a man's voice came over the other end. Mom, you should come home with Lewis tonight. Jake's fiancée is coming home for the first time to meet the family. The old lady was taken aback. Something that had been foggy in her mind suddenly became clear. In a flash, she remembered who she was. So she was the sucker, old Mrs. Horton, thinking back to the mockery and contempt she had just suffered. The old lady immediately growled, You bet I will go home. She hung up the phone and then sent a voice message over WhatsApp to Lewis Horton. Dear grandson, I've just been mistreated. You must come home tonight and stand up for me. After she sent the message, the old lady turned to Kira and whispered, Dear, I finally remember what my grandson's name is. Kira asked, What's his name? She was quite curious about who this grandson was. Given the wide range of her work, there was a chance they had met. The old lady gestured her over. Kira bent down, moved closer, and then heard what the old lady said. I'll only tell you. You mustn't tell anybody else. Okay. The old lady cleared her throat. His nickname is Puppy. Kira was dumbfounded. The old lady explained, My grandson was born in the year of the dog. He was only a little over 2 pounds at birth. The doctor said he wouldn't live long, so I gave him this name, hoping it would bring him good luck. Kira's mouth twitched, barely holding back her laughter. From the old lady's words, it was clear that her grandson was at least the CEO of a company. Did his subordinates even know he was called Puppy? Just as she was about to ask his real name, the old lady started speaking again. Granddaughter-in-law, the clothes here aren't good. Would you accompany me home to get a few more this evening? Kira had just heard the old lady's voice message to grandson, so she knew he would be home too. Since they had agreed to meet, she didn't decline. Okay. After finding a nice place to have lunch, Kira was planning to send the old lady home to rest and then go to see Lewis Horton. But the old lady said, I'm not tired at all. I'll go to work with you. When you finish work, you can go home with me. She seemed to be afraid that Kira might regret it and not go home with her. Such an old baby. Kira agreed in resignation. They arrived at the site of a charity donation event organized by the government. Kira arranged for the old lady to go to the resting room and then, with her press ID in hand, took her seat in the hall. Today, Lewis Horton would be representing the Horton Group in making a donation. She sat right in the middle of the front row in a perfect position to be seen by him. She even talked to the organizers so that she would be picked to ask a question later. In front of all the people, she was planning to hint to Lewis Horton that he should check his marriage status at the Bureau of Civil Affairs. Upon hearing the hint, Lewis wouldn't look too happy. Kira imagined a wonderful scene. The activity began, and soon the host mentioned the name of Horton Group. Kira was excited and was waiting for Lewis Horton, but she saw Tom Davis on the stage. Tom gave Kira a meaningful glance. I'm sorry, but Mr. Horton had something else come up today. However, the donation from Horton Group must still be delivered as planned. Kira's smile froze on her face. She took out her phone and saw a message that Samuel sent her 5 minutes ago. Boss, all of Lewis Horton's recent schedules have been temporarily changed. What a cunning man, but it likely wasn't because of her. After all, in Lewis Horton's eyes, she was someone he could easily ignore. It was likely that he had discovered his schedule had been leaked and had to change it temporarily for safety reasons. Who was he attempting to avoid? Kira continued her interview. In the end, She handed over the equipment and interview materials to a colleague from the same newspaper and let them leave first. She went to the resting room to fetch the old lady and then went to a car manufacturing factory. This was a branch of the Horton Group. While Lewis could cancel the rest of his schedule, this kind of grassroots factory inspection had already been prepared by the factory, so he couldn't just change it on a whim. That would be disrespectful to so many workers. Sure enough, after Kira and the old lady waited in the coffee shop outside the factory for a while, they saw a low-key black Bentley drive into the factory gate. Kira asked the coffee shop staff to look after the old lady while she walked to the factory. She showed her temporary worker ID to the gatehouse. The gatekeeper glanced at it and then said, "I'm sorry, but Mr. Davis ordered that during Mr. Horton's inspection, all delivery men, maintenance workers, as well as interns and temporary employees, are not allowed to enter." Kira knew it would be like this. Tom was really going out of his way to stop her from seeing Lewis Horton. Kira smirked, then handed over another work badge. Seeing it, the gatekeeper immediately stood upright and looked at her with admiration. "Please come in." Kira took back the work badge and casually went into the gate. She quickly found Lewis Horton. The man was inspecting the workshop under the guidance of the factory head. All the workers were outside the door, and the entrance was guarded by bodyguards, making it impossible to get in. Kira could only look at him through the glass window from a distance. The man was dressed in a suit, and his handsome face and luxurious demeanor contrasted sharply with the dark, cold machinery around him, creating a visual feast. He was listening intently to the factory head, occasionally interjecting, which left the factory head amazed. 3 to 5 minutes later, the factory head was thoroughly impressed with this new CEO. Suddenly, the man seemed to sense something, turned his head slowly, and met eyes with Kira. Kira waved at him, but Lewis Horton frowned and looked away. At this moment, Tom stepped forward and pulled down all the blinds, cutting off all sight. Kira was speechless. Once again, she was escorted out of the factory by the bodyguards, and Tom scolded the gatekeeper at the gate. "Didn't I say that interns and temporary workers were not allowed in?" The gatekeeper stammered, "But she's not an ordinary temporary worker. Tom scoffed and interrupted the gatekeeper. "She's indeed extraordinary. After all, how could an ordinary person hold so many jobs?" Tom was extremely annoyed. He said angrily to Kira, "Miss Olson, our boss didn't want to stoop to your level before, but you just wouldn't take the hint. You've bothered him over and over again. If you dare to show up in front of him again, we will report you for harassment." Kira sighed. "If you don't want me to continue bothering you, just go to the Bureau of Civil Affairs and check whether Mr. Horton and I are married. Why won't you believe me?" Tom sneered. "In our country, all formalities must be completed for a marriage certificate, and there's no way a certificate will be issued when the parties involved aren't present. Your lies are absurd and ridiculous. Only a fool would believe such nonsense." Kira now knew that this argument was futile. She shrugged and said helplessly, "Then I guess I'll just have to keep bothering you." Tom sneered. "Do you really think you can see our boss whenever you want? If you ever see him again, that would mean I've failed as an assistant. If that happens, I'll eat excrement live on broadcast." Kira didn't say anything else and turned to leave. It seemed that tomorrow she really had to resort to drastic measures. After picking up the old lady, Kira sent a WhatsApp message to grandson. "Granny wants to go home to get some clothes. What's your address?" Grandson quickly sent a location. He sent another message. "I'll be done soon. Where are you? I'll pick you up." Kira opened the location and was shocked when she saw it. No, One Manor. Wasn't that the Horton family's residence? House One Manor of Oceanion was quite legendary. It sat halfway up a hill with the whole community sprawling across 3,000 acres, and Horton's old house bathed in over 2,000 acres. The rest were a few dozen small villas that dotted around the Horton property. It was the most famous rich district in Oceanion. Kira assumed the elderly lady lived in one of those small villas. It never crossed her mind that this could be the Horton house. She replied to a message. "That's all right. We're already in a taxi." The elderly lady looked tired and was dozing off as soon as she got into the car. The taxi wended its way on a broad and well-maintained mountain road before entering House One Manor and dropped them at the location specified by the GPS. Kira looked up at a grandeur black gate, which was carved with antique patterns, and hesitated. "Grandma, is this your home?" The elderly lady, still half asleep, looked dazed. "Granddaughter-in-law, I can't remember." Kira was speechless. She messaged grandson, "I think we might have taken the wrong turn." Grandson replied, "Stay put. I'll be right there." As they drove in, Kira noticed that even the nearest house was a 5-minute drive away. It wasn't wise to wander around. She helped the elderly lady to a stone bench nearby to sit. Suddenly, a BMW X7 pulled up in front of them. Isla and Poppy got out of the back seat and marched toward them. Poppy's brows furrowed in anger, and she cried out, "Kira, it really is you. What are you doing here?" She was here today as Isla's nanny. She spotted a young woman lingering in front of Horton's house from afar. Never expecting it to be Kira, Isla glanced at the tightly closed gate of the Horton house. "Kira, are you back to pestering Mr. Horton?" At that, Poppy rebuked fiercely. "You bitch, don't you know what the occasion is? Leave immediately. If you ruin Isla's family reunion, you'll regret it." Kira was really sick of them. But the elderly woman was there, and she didn't want a conflict, so she swallowed her impatience and tried to explain, "I'm here to take the old lady home. We just took the wrong turn." Isla responded instinctively, "Isn't this your husband's grandma? She can't possibly live in this community." Kira retorted sarcastically, "Why can't she? Did your family build this community?" Isla was speechless, but Poppy sneered, "What are you pretending for? Can your poor husband's grandma afford a house here?" She then turned to the elderly woman, "Old thing, tell me, which villa do you live in?" Just as Kira was about to say something, the elderly woman suddenly stood up. "I remembered. I live here. Granddaughter-in-law, let's go home." She grabbed Kira's hand and began to head toward the grand gate of the Horton house. The gate was still 100 meters away, but they only took a few steps when Isla spoke. "Kira, after all that, you're using the old lady as an excuse to get into the Horton house, aren't you?" Kira paused and fixed her gaze ahead of her. The Horton house? Even though she had a vague suspicion upon seeing the grandeur gate. But how could she possibly connect the polite grandson from WhatsApp with the ruthless Lewis? Maybe the old woman remembered wrong? Just as she was about to double-check, Poppy lunged over, reaching out to grab the old woman. "You shameless old hag. How dare you try to get in with this excuse? I won't let you create chaos in the Horton house." Kira was taken aback. She managed to shield the elderly woman, and with one hand grabbing Poppy, she pushed her away forcefully, shouting, "What do you think you're doing?" The elderly lady was old and frail and could not stand any form of rough action. Poppy staggered backward from the force of the push. Once she regained her balance, she cursed Kira. "You ungrateful wretch, to think that you would hurt your own mother for this old woman. I'll call the police and have you charged with unfilial conduct." Kira ignored her, but the elderly woman retorted instantly, "My granddaughter-in-law is not unfilial." "You're lying." Poppy chuckled. "Old hag, you must be really desperate to allow your granddaughter-in-law to be with another man, aren't you? Is it because she gives you a cut? Or is your family just naturally into this kind of stuff? You must have served a lot of men in your youth, you old hussy." "Shut up," Kira blurted out, hurriedly checking the old lady. Never having been insulted like this, the elderly woman was visibly shaken. She clutched at her chest, her body beginning to shake uncontrollably, and she collapsed to the ground. Kira quickly helped her up. "Grandma, what's wrong?" The elderly lady was gasping for breath and couldn't form a single word. Kira immediately took out the nitroglycerin from her pocket, but upon opening the bottle, she realized that it was empty. Her pupils contracted. The elderly lady was weak. CPR wouldn't be suitable unless absolutely necessary. It would be best to give her medication. She cast a dire look at the grand gate. The Horton house must have medication. Even if the elderly lady wasn't part of the Horton family, they were neighbors, and they wouldn't just stand by and let her die, would they? Carrying the old lady in her arms, Kira comforted her. "Don't worry, Grandma. I'll take you inside to get some medicine." But Isla grabbed her arm forcefully. Kira, stop it. It was tolerable when you acted pitiful to buy clothes. But how could you deliberately provoke the Horton family? They won't let you in. She looked over at the elderly woman, an unsettling gleam in her eyes. The old woman looked pretty sick and seemed to be about to pass away any moment. If she were to die, Kira's husband would surely blame her. After that, Kira wouldn't dare to mess with other men. At this moment, Kira felt like she was about to explode in frustration. Her beautiful eyes were filled with towering rage, and she lifted her foot to kick Isla. Get lost. Her voice was hoarse with anger. But the next moment, her leg was tightly hugged by someone. Poppy was sitting on the ground, her arms wrapped tightly around Kira's legs with no regard for her image. You think you're the only one who can deliberately provoke others? You're wrong. I'm also dying. I've been beaten up by my own daughter. My chest hurts so bad, I can't take it anymore. Even if I'm going to die today, I won't let this old hag deliberately provoke the Horton family. Kira was so incensed that she was trembling all over, her eyes darkening. She kicked Poppy off and rammed her elbow into Isla's stomach, then strode forward. Isla bent over in pain, breaking into a cold sweat. Ignoring her own aches and pains, Poppy once again lunged at Kira, latching on her legs and yelling hysterically, "Help! She's trying to murder me!" Being cautious of the elderly woman in her arms, Kira found herself unable to shake Poppy off. Just as things started to escalate, a black Bentley slowly made its way over. Lewis got out of the car, demanding sharply, "What the hell are you doing?" Isla immediately said, "Mr. Horton, it's Kira. She's trying to force her way into the Horton family house with a dying old woman. I tried to stop her, but..." Hearing this, Kira slowly turned around. Upon seeing the elderly woman in her arms, Lewis's pupils contracted. The elderly woman in Kira's arms was looking pale, with her arms hanging limply. At the sight, Lewis wasted no time and strode toward them. Though he appeared calm, he was filled with anxiety. The elderly woman was the one person he was closest to in this world. Over the past few years, her health had been deteriorating. Their family doctor had even hinted to old Mrs. Horton that she might not make it through the year. He couldn't lose her. When Kira saw him approaching, she drew her own conclusions. However, it wasn't the right time to discuss it. She quickly blurted out, "Granny just had a heart attack. She has used all her nitroglycerin pills and urgently needs medication." After a pause, she added, "She'll be okay once she gets the medicine." Lewis nervously pressed his lips together. He reached out to take the elderly woman from Kira and darted into the Horton family home without looking back. Kira didn't follow inside. Her leg was still being held by Poppy. Isla watched Lewis from behind with uncertainty. A strong feeling of unease stirred her. Is that really old Mrs. Horton? How could old Mrs. Horton be with Kira? That woman is the grandmother of Kira's husband. Poppy released Kira and stood up, dusting off her clothes as she said, "Mr. Horton looks so worried. He's probably afraid of causing a real disaster. If someone were to die here, the Horton family won't look good when word gets out." She shot Kira a spiteful glare. She's banking on this to rush into the Horton house while carrying that decrepit old woman, isn't she? Isla frowned. It could be. Kira's punk husband couldn't possibly be Lewis, right? She was probably overthinking. Just then, the front door of the Horton house opened, and Jake stepped out. Isla's eyes lit up as she said playfully, "Jake, you could have just waited for me at the parking lot. Why did you come all the way to the front door?" Jake was clearly irritated. Isla had texted him that she was almost there, but carrying too many gifts, and asked him to come pick her up. He waited in the parking lot for a long time, and when she didn't show up, he came out to check. His eyes fell on Kira, and he paused mid-step. But in the next moment, his previous impatience melted away, replaced by a softness. He said gently to Isla, "Well, it's your first visit. I was afraid you might get lost." Isla ran to him excitedly and grabbed his arm as if staking her claim. She cooed to him, "Jake, you're so nice." Testing the waters, she asked, "Is old Mrs. Horton at home?" "Yes." "Has she been home all day?" Did she got it all? Well, she has not been well for a while and has mostly been resting at home. Old Mrs. Horton lived on her own in a separate courtyard and didn't like being disturbed. Jake's words sounded casual, but Islam mistook them for truth and was instantly relieved. Jake unabashedly eyed Kira. He didn't miss a single change in her expression, trying to find some hint of jealousy, envy, or resentment. But there was none, not a trace. A sullen look gradually cast over his face. Kira was more worried about the old lady's health and paid no attention to the couple's display of affection. At this point, she was reasonably sure that the grandson she chatted with was Lewis. She looked at the imposing gate, wondering if she would be stopped if she tried to enter now. Suddenly, her view was obscured. Jake stood in front of her, bluntly asking, "Kira, are you here to see me because you've had a change of heart?" Kira was dumbfounded. With a cold laugh, Jake spat out words filled with venom. "If you had given in, a phone call would have been enough. Who allowed you to come to the Horton house? Do you think you, an illegitimate daughter, even deserve to set foot here?" Kira pressed her lips together. Jake softened at her stubbornness. "If you want to have a look inside, I can." Before he could finish a sentence, Isla cut him off. "Jake, you've misunderstood. Kira is waiting for her husband's grandmother. The old lady just had a sudden heart attack, and Mr. Horton rushed her inside for emergency treatment." Jake was taken aback. "Husband?" Isla chuckled. "Indeed, I didn't get a chance to tell you. Kira is married." Jake's eyes suddenly reddened as he gnashed his teeth. "Kira, who is he?" His response gave the impression of a man catching his partner cheating in the act. Kira gave him a mocking look and said, "Jake, who my husband is, has nothing to do with you." His voice spiked as he shouted back, "What do you mean it's none of my business? I want to see who dares to marry you without my consent." Isla hastily replied, "From what I've heard from Kira's mother, he's just a street punk." Jake clenched his fists, not choosing his words as he spat out. "So, you decided to disgrace yourself? Fine. A bastard girl and a punk. You truly make a perfect match." Isla continued to fan the flames. "Kira must be pretty resentful. That's why she keeps pestering Mr. Horton." Kira shot back in a cold, mocking laugh. "Isla, for someone who considers herself a lady, it's surprising that your mind is filled with such filthy thoughts. Can't you think of anything else?" A chill ran down Isla's spine, and she clenched her fingers. With a sigh, she said, "Kira, I understand that you're seeking revenge on me and Jake, but Mr. Horton is already married. You shouldn't meddle in someone else's marriage." Jake exploded when he heard this. He had been waiting for Kira to call him these past few days and beg for his forgiveness. He was even willing to give her a second chance if she did so. Turns out she has already moved on. He flew into a rage. "Now I understand why your husband's grandmother had a heart attack at my doorstep. You were here to visit my uncle, weren't you, Kira? How could you be so shameless?" He was steaming, seething with rage. He pointed at Kira and told the door guard, "See that? Remember this face. Don't let her step foot inside the Horton house." Isla lowered her gaze to hide the smirk playing at the corners of her lips. After all, she still had some say in the entrance to the Horton house. Meanwhile, a butler from the Horton family emerged from the house. His gaze swept over the crowd, finally landing on Kira. "Miss Kira, the master invites you in." Isla froze. Jake looked up dumbstruck. On the other hand, Kira glanced at the door guard, a teasing smile playing on her lips. "So, can I go in now?" The door guard glanced anxiously at Jake, then, without hesitation, opened the door for Kira. He didn't know who had the final say in the Horton family. The Hortons' house was huge. Inside the gate, a buggy was available to shuttle Kira directly to the main building's entrance. The butler said respectfully, "Madam is fine now. She and the master are waiting for you in the drawing room." Relieved, Kira got out of the buggy. She noticed the Olsen family's BMW X7 parked not far away in the parking lot. With Jake leading the way, Isla and Poppy strode menacingly toward Kira, meeting her just outside. Poppy glared venomously at her. "Mr. Horton probably asked you to come pick up your grandmother here. After you do that, make sure you leave promptly." Don't let a nasty creature like you smear the Horton house's carpets. As they entered the drawing room together, they saw old Mrs. Horton sitting upright on the head sofa. The elderly lady glared at them, fuming. Who are you calling a nasty creature? The little old lady was now adorned in luxurious clothing, though she still looked a little pale. Lewis was sitting frostily to her left. To her right was a man over 60. It was Lewis's father. A middle-aged couple in their 40s sat on the nearby sofa. They were Lewis' elder brother and sister-in-law, and also the parents of Jake. Although no one had introduced the identity of the petite old lady, anyone able to sit in a prominent position in the Horton family was definitely old Mrs. Horton. Poppy stood where she was dumbfounded. You. She stuttered for a while, but couldn't complete a sentence. Isla was about to collapse, but was fortunately caught by Jake. Jake was puzzled. What's wrong with you? Isla's hands were trembling. She'd been striving for a connection with the Horton family all along and was painstakingly trying to please every elder here. But before she even entered the door, she had already offended old Mrs. Horton. She suddenly chuckled bitterly. Kira, why did you trick us, saying old Mrs. Horton is your husband's grandmother? Due to that, we were disrespectful to the old lady. Kira instantly felt several suspicious glances directed at her in the room. Poppy, having recovered, scolded her. You're such a liar. You know that Mrs. Horton is old, so you dare to deceive her. What do you take the Horton family for? Kneel and apologize immediately. Kira's eyes darkened. They were trying to shift the blame, throwing all the fault onto her, and absolving Isla in the process. What good tactic? Smash! A teacup was thrown over by old Mrs. Horton, hitting Poppy. The boiling tea inside splashed onto her, but Poppy didn't dare scream. Shut up! Mrs. Horton screamed in anger. She's my granddaughter-in-law. Despite enduring the pain of a burn, Poppy yelled, Mrs. Horton, you've been deceived by her. I'm completely sure that her husband is just a little punk. No need to argue. Why not just ask the parties involved? Jake's mother chimed in. Lewis, is she really the wife you're hiding and not bringing home? Kira glanced swiftly towards Lewis, and then she heard that expected response. No. The man, as always, was icy and emotionless. One ungrateful, vindictive, mean person. A flash of resentment shot through Kira's eyes. Relief washed over Isla's face, and she sighed. Poppy sneered. I knew all along that this was all Kira's doing. Kira gave a cold snort and was about to retort, but instead heard the man's deep voice again. It's my grandmother who mistook her, so I asked Miss Olson to help take care of my grandmother for a while. Kira didn't know what to say. All right, she admitted she was shouting a little too loud in her head when she cursed him just now. Everyone was quiet for a moment. No one expected this turn of events. After a while, Isla lowered her head. So that's how it is. Kira, why didn't you tell us the truth? If you had, this misunderstanding wouldn't have happened. Miss Isla. Lewis relaxed on the couch, his posture casual, but his words struck with force. Facing troubles by hiding behind others and shirking your responsibilities, is this how the Olsen family raises its daughters? Old Mrs. Horton, enlightened by his words, thundered. You think I'm stupid since I have dementia? Do you think I can't see through these little tricks? You've made a mistake, but you're not repentant. Not only that, but you're trying to shift the blame onto others. You two truly are shameless. Old Mrs. Horton turned to Jake. Call off the wedding. I don't want her as my granddaughter-in-law. Isla was stunned. The marriage she'd worked so hard to secure couldn't just be gone like that. She looked toward Jake, but the man looked astonished, his gaze fixed on Kira, evidently still shocked by the news of her marriage. Isla clenched her fingers tight. Lowering her head, she walked to Jake, tears rolling down her face. Jake, I was wrong. Rest assured, even if the marriage is canceled, I'll still take you to the person I promised to introduce to you. Jake came to his senses. Isla still wanted to introduce Drive South to him. Currently in Kira's new energy projects, Drive South was the top expert. He quickly spoke to old Mrs. Horton. Great-grandmother, Isla really didn't know, so please forgive her. Besides, both families have already exchanged betrothal gifts. It's really not appropriate to call off the marriage. Old Mrs. Horton gave him a meaningful look. You're grown up now. I can't control you. Do as you please. Old Mrs. Horton understood a profound truth. The older generation shouldn't act like an old meddler. The problems of the great-grandson should be solved by his parents, and she didn't want to interfere anymore. However, Jake's mother laughed. Grandma, have you forgotten about the welcome gift? Old Mrs. Horton lowered her eyes. Have someone transfer $30,000 to Jake. Jake's mother was stunned. But I remember you saying you'd give them 2% shares as a gift to ease their financial stress in their marriage. If you were to ask who was the wealthiest in the Horton family, it was definitely old Mrs. Horton. She was from a wealthy family in Clarence and received a generous dowry when she married. Moreover, she controlled 20% of the Horton family shares. Jake's mother had been wanting to take a slice from her through this marriage. Everything had been agreed upon, but old Mrs. Horton changed her mind at the last minute. Old Mrs. Horton looked at her with a half-laughing, half-serious look and retorted, I'm dissatisfied with this great-granddaughter-in-law, so I won't give them any shares. Isla's face turned pale. She felt humiliated. There were many servants in the Horton family, and these words would definitely spread. Soon, the whole Ocean Ion would know that she'd been rejected by old Mrs. Horton. Nothing was more important to the daughter of a rich family than her reputation. Old Mrs. Horton might as well slap her in the face. Obviously, old Mrs. Horton didn't care about these things. Having made her statement, she immediately took Kira and Lewis back to her residence. Old Mrs. Horton then excused herself, saying she urgently needed to use the bathroom. She left Kira with Lewis alone themselves. In an instant, there were only the two of them left in the yard. The night was as dark as ink. Kira stood shoulder to shoulder with Lewis, only then realizing that the man was a head taller than her. He must be about 6 feet tall. Didn't the old lady say he was very thin and small when he was born? While she was silently cursing him, Lewis suddenly looked at her, his eyebrows furrowed in disgust. Need I? Kira wouldn't be outdone and also stare back at him. Puppy. Lewis's face turned green. She has coaxed Grandma into telling her even that. She must have a hidden agenda. Perhaps Grandma's attachment to her was an accident without any calculation involved, but this woman willingly took Grandma in. Maybe it was because Grandma accidentally revealed her identity. After Kira snapped at him, she didn't forget the main point. I remember you said you would do me a favor. Could you go with me to the Civil Affairs Bureau to check on my marital status? Lewis's face grew dark, and he snapped impatiently. Fine, then let's go. If it's not true, I hope you stop using Grandma as an excuse to pester me. Having heard their argument, the old lady poked her head out from the window. Brat, are you upsetting my granddaughter-in-law? Lewis's face tightened. No. The old lady cast a doubtful glance at Kira. Granddaughter-in-law, is that? True. Kira gave Lewis a seemingly amused glare. She surprisingly noticed a trace of anxiousness on his otherwise expressionless face. She chuckled. No, he's not upsetting me. The man seemed to heave a sigh of relief, although barely noticeable. Old Mrs. Horton chuckled. Good. Dinner's ready. Come on in. Their dinner was fairly simple. 4 dishes and 1 soup, just enough for 3 people. But the old lady barely had any appetite. She put down her fork after a few bites. She tiredly said, Granddaughter-in-law, I'm tired. Let's go home. Kira, try to persuade her. Please don't stress yourself. Rest here at home tonight. The small courtyard was like a mini nursing home, equipped with all kinds of medical equipment. However, the old lady nervously clung onto Kira's hand. Can you stay with me then? Kira pursed her lips. She glanced at Lewis. In fact, she was also worried about the old lady, but considering how much. Lewis loathed her and suspected her of using the old lady to get closer to him. He certainly wouldn't agree. The man fell silent, then said, All right. He then gave her a meaningful glance. His intention was clear. He was doing all this for his grandmother, and she shouldn't misconstrue anything. Kira gave a slight twitch at the corner of her mouth. Old Mrs. Horton was satisfied. All right, wherever my granddaughter-in-law is, there I am. After dinner, Kira helped old Mrs. Horton back to her room to rest. The old lady must have been really tired today after making a scene when she fell ill. She fell asleep as soon as she took hold of Kira's hand. She was having an extremely restless sleep. As soon as Kira let go of her hand, the old lady began groping around in her sleep, mumbling granddaughter-in-law. Kira was helpless and could only sit by the bed, keeping her company. Outside the window, Lewis had a serious expression on his face. "What's going on with Grandma?" The family doctor, who had studied psychology, sighed. "Although I don't know why old Mrs. Horton recognized this girl, I can more or less guess why she is so restless. She's afraid that her granddaughter-in-law will leave." "What?" The family doctor gave Lewis a glance. "It seems like old Mrs. Horton feels like she won't be able to survive this year. She's afraid if she's gone, you'll end up with no constraints, and granddaughter-in-law is the only person she can leave behind to keep you company." Lewis was slightly startled. His dark eyes reflected suppressed emotions for a while before settling back into calmness. He stood in the moonlight, seeming as if he was going to blend completely into the darkness behind him. No one knew how much time had elapsed before the man suddenly turned around and walked towards the main house in big strides. For Isla, this meal was very difficult to get through. The first branch of the family had lost 2% of the shares because of her. Jake's mother, Melissa Knight, was extremely dissatisfied and made cutting remarks toward Isla. "Isn't Kira an illegitimate daughter? How come she can get into the good graces of old Mrs. Horton, but you can't?" Isla could only lower her head in apology. "Auntie, I'm not a sweet-tongued ass." "Her, I don't know how to flatter other people." Melissa snorted in contempt. "I don't care what method you use, but you have to get those 2% shares back. Otherwise, don't even think about stepping into the Horton family." Isla was left with her inner grievances untold. She was finally able to ask for leave after going through the hard ordeal of finishing her meal. But before she could leave, Lewis returned. The man was tall, and his presence filled the room with a strong, oppressive aura the moment he entered. His gaze was sharp as a torch, and after sweeping over the leftover food on the dining table, his face soured even more. Old Mrs. Horton didn't get to eat anything tonight, and they are here satisfying themselves? Melissa didn't dare to speak when she saw his face. It was Jake's father, Oliver Horton, who frowned and asked, "Lewis, what brings you here?" Lewis ignored his namesake older brother and instead turned to Isla. "Since the marriage isn't off, she's considered part of the Horton family as of now, right?" Everyone was left puzzled. "Yes. In that case, she has to follow the rules of the Horton family. She has shown disrespect to her elders today. Therefore, she is to kneel in the ancestral hall for a night." Lewis gave a signal without further explanation, and 2 bodyguards walked up toward Isla. "Miss Olson, please come with us." Isla was dumbstruck. Kneeling for the whole night in the ancestral hall? As a pampered child from a very young age, how could she bear that? She sought help from Jake, but she saw that he didn't dare to rebel against the person in power. She took a deep breath and had no choice but to follow the bodyguards. Just as she was about to step out, she heard Jake ask, "Uncle Lewis, where's Kira?" As she left, then she heard the man's warning reply, "She's my guest and is staying at the Hortons tonight." Isla followed the bodyguards to the ancestral hall. The bodyguard said, "Mr. Horton has instructed us. Since you haven't married into the family, you cannot enter the Horton family ancestral hall, so just kneel outside." Outside was a paved area made of green bricks. Isla wanted to say something, but the 2 bodyguards seemed to stand tall like gatekeepers, their cold eyes watching her. "Miss Olson, please." The weather in October was already quite chilly at night. Isla was shivering. The bone-piercing cold seeped into her bones from her kneecaps. She wanted to slacken a bit, but those 2 bodyguards stared at her intently, as if they were prison guards. They didn't say a word, but still, their silence made one shudder. On recalling that at this very moment, Kira must be lying on a warm and soft bed, Isla gritted her teeth in hatred. But Kira would only stay with the Horton family for a night, while Isla could stay here for a lifetime in the future. She was about to meet with Drive South soon, and she had to make good use of this card. When Kira woke up, she found herself lying in bed. There was also a small gray blanket placed over her, which didn't match the interior of the old lady's room. She didn't think much of it. After getting up and freshening up, she had breakfast with old Mrs. Horton and Lewis. A plate of donuts was placed on the dining table. Old Mrs. Horton immediately picked one up. Lewis frowned. His grandma had high blood sugar, and it wasn't suitable for her to eat foods high in fat and sugar like these. As he was thinking of how to dissuade her, he heard Kira say plainly, "Grandma, these donuts aren't suitable for you." Right after that, the old lady, who was picky about her food and liked to eat whatever she pleased, diverted her hand in midair and put the donut into Kira's bowl. Old Mrs. Horton smiled at her pleasantly. "Granddaughter-in-law, I was getting it for you." Lewis was speechless. He looked at Kira scrupulously, unable to understand why Grandma was so willing to listen to her. Kira started to eat the donut unreservedly. She then looked at Lewis. "By the way, bring your ID card and household registration book when we go to the Civil Affairs Bureau later." Old Mrs. Horton asked curiously, "What are you going to the Civil Affairs Bureau for?" Kira answered casually, "We lost the marriage certificate, so we need a new one." A marriage certificate was needed for a divorce, and she wasn't just fobbing old Mrs. Horton off. However, much to her surprise upon hearing this, old Mrs. Horton quickly retorted, "It's not lost." She hurriedly went into the bedroom and swiftly brought back 2 red marriage certificates before handing them to Kira and Lewis. Kira stared dumbfounded at the marriage certificate in her hand. She suddenly realized that the first time old Mrs. Horton saw her, she called her granddaughter-in-law. The old lady had known all along that Kira and Lewis were married. Kira felt that she had found a clue. She immediately asked, "Grandma, how did you come by this marriage certificate?" Old Mrs. Horton was taken aback, her eyes growing a touch bewildered. I can't really remember." Kira continued, "How did Mr. Horton and I come to be married?" Old Mrs. Horton just shook her head. "I don't recall." Kira grew somewhat anxious. "Grandma, please try to think back." "Enough," Lewis said unhappily, his towering figure standing between the 2 women. His eyes were cold when he asked, "Miss Olson, is this certificate real?" "Of course." Lewis's face darkened. "Are you going to say we don't need to go to the Civil Affairs Bureau now?" So that was her aim. She used a legitimate excuse like going to the Civil Affairs Bureau as a setup, then lured his grandma into taking out this fake certificate and tricking him into believing it was true. If he hadn't seen how his grandma just did as she was told, he might have believed Kira. Kira sensed the hostility in the man's tone and found it baffling. "We don't have to go today. Divorce isn't something that could be resolved by just stopping by the Civil Affairs Bureau." For 2 years, they were legally husband and wife, so there were a lot of property distribution issues to deal with. They needed to sign a divorce agreement first. "No." After Lewis spoke, he carefully observed Kira. She was slightly taken aback. Then she said nonchalantly, "Whatever you say." He wondered if she was too confident in her acting that she wouldn't give up until the last moment. Or was this marriage certificate genuine? Lewis was suddenly unsure. He simply picked up the marriage certificate and headed out. "I'll wait for you in the parking lot." Kira smiled reassuringly at the old lady, then followed Lewis out. The man walked quickly, and she almost had to trot to keep up with him. When they arrived at the parking lot, they saw Poppy standing there with an ashen-faced Isla, who was shaking and sneezing. Poppy seemed heartbroken. On seeing Kira, Poppy's eyes lit up. "Kira." She quickly walked over, cautiously avoiding Lewis. She stood before Kira and said self-righteously, "You must help your sister." Kira raised an eyebrow. She didn't understand why the 2 were out so early in the morning. Didn't they leave last night? Before she could speak, Poppy was already rambling. "Kira, you're an illegitimate child, but the Olson family didn't mind your background and raise you. For all the hardship they went through, you should reciprocate for the Olson family. Your sister has been even better to you. Not only did she let you go to school with her, but she also shared her clothes with you. And also, you were so weak when you were born that you wouldn't have survived. I didn't have any milk, so you only survived because you took the milk that was supposed to be for your sister. Back then, the Olson family hadn't intended to take us in. Mrs. Olson and your father only decided to keep us because you and your sister were born the same day. So, you owe your sister. You should repay her kindness all your life. Kira hadn't heard those words in 10 years. When she was little, she believed these lies and worked like a horse for the Olson family. She let Isla bully her. How ridiculous. Indeed, the Olson family had raised her, but parents having to raise a child was a legal obligation. If they hadn't taken care of her, they would have been guilty of desertion. Why? She did go to school with Isla Olson, but she had to carry Isla to school on their way to school and back home. She also had to be Olson's servant at school. If Isla happened to cough one day, it was Kira's fault for not taking good care of her, and she would get beaten by Poppy. In school, she could only get the last place in exams because she couldn't outshine Isla, and the clothes. Her parents never prepared any for her. She could only wear Isla's hand-me-downs. Hence, her clothes were always a bit too small. Mrs. Olson did buy her a new dress once, but as soon as she put it on, it was taken off by Poppy and given to Isla, stating that she wasn't good enough. She couldn't be prettier than Isla. As for being weak, which baby wouldn't be weak after being starved for 5 days? The mockery in Kira's eyes grew more intense. But Poppy didn't sense her emotions at all. After saying those things, she immediately added, "Now that you've grown up, you finally have a chance to repay the Olson family. Kira, old Mrs. Horton listens to you, right? Ask her to return the 2% of the shares to your sister." Kira looked down and laughed. "You're right." Poppy's face lit up, thinking she had convinced Kira, only to hear the girl's indifferent voice a moment later. "TM, just a low-born, illegitimate daughter. How could old Mrs. Horton possibly listen to me?" Poppy froze, wanting to say something else, but Kira had already walked past her and got into Lewis's car. "Let's go." Lewis was speechless. He looked at the girl sitting in the back seat, thinking about telling her that the driver hadn't arrived yet. But then Poppy seemed to try to run to the car. Lewis sat behind the wheel and closed the door. He then slowly fastened his seatbelt before starting the car and driving off. The black Bentley drove smoothly. Lewis looked back at the girl through his rearview mirror. She was staring at the passing scenery outside the window. Her exquisite and beautiful face was calm. He looked away and continued driving. He had planned to warn her, but in the end, he didn't say anything. The car quickly arrived at the Civil Affairs Bureau. As soon as he stopped, Tom knocked on the driver's side window. Lewis rolled down the window, and Tom's voice came through. "Boss, the driver said you took the car yourself, and it scared me, so I followed the GPS. Did something happen?" "No." Lewis was as sparing with his words as ever. Tom looked at the Civil Affairs Bureau. "Why did you come here? Don't tell me you were so bothered by Kira Olson that you became paranoid. Don't worry. I told you. She can't see you again. If she does, then I will." Livestream eating shit. Before Tom could finish, he heard a lazy female voice. He stiffened and slowly looked at the back seat to find Kira with a teasing look in her eyes. "Which livestream channel do you use?" Tom was completely stunned. The three of them entered the Civil Affairs Bureau and approached the service window. Tom took the lead and asked, "Hi, I have an inquiry. Can one pick up the marriage certificate without the persons involved being present?" The clerk said, "Absolutely not." "Did you hear that?" Tom looked at Kira mockingly, glancing at the marriage certificate in her hands before he sneered. "You even prepared a fake certificate? Nice. I'll report you for forgery and harassment now." However, Lewis handed over the marriage certificate. "Excuse me, could you please check if this marriage certificate is genuine?" The staff member gave him a strange look, took the marriage certificate, and began inputting information into the computer. Lewis pursed his lips. He suddenly found his actions absurd. Despite being certain that he wasn't married, he had somehow ended up here. He even missed a very important meeting for it. The staff member soon gave him the answer. "It's genuine." Lewis was surprised. Hearing the staff member's words, Tom cried out involuntarily, "How's that possible? Did you get the data entry wrong?" The staff member glared at him. "What are you talking about? Marriage is a serious matter. We have to confirm both parties' identities meticulously, and they have to sign a guarantee." "A guarantee?" Kira asked. "Can we take a look at our guarantee?" "Please bring us the guarantee." Lewis spoke at the same time. The two exchanged a glance and quickly looked away. The staff member reluctantly stood up. You two do have chemistry as a couple. All right, I'll go get it for you. He soon returned with their registration documents. From them, he pulled out the guarantee and handed it over to Kira and Lewis. Kira realized that the handwriting on it was indeed hers. Tom also cried out, "Boss, this is your handwriting." Kira thought for a moment and then looked at the surveillance cameras. "Excuse me, can we take a look at the recording from the day we registered?" The staff member replied, "Sorry, we only keep recordings for 6 months." The staff member continually assured them that the marriage certificate would only be issued if both parties were present, and they never made mistakes. The three of them eventually left the Civil Affairs Bureau in resignation. Standing at the entrance, Tom asked in confusion, "Boss, what do we do now?" Lewis pondered. Kira raised her eyebrows. "I want a divorce. I want a divorce." The two spoke in unison again. Tom was startled, then asked, "Do we do it now? Should we discuss the terms of the divorce?" "I will have my lawyer contact you. Talk to my lawyer." Lewis and Kira spoke at the same time again. After both had finished speaking, they couldn't help but look at each other. Kira laughed and said straightforwardly, "Why don't we each have our lawyers draft an agreement to review first? If there's an issue, let the lawyers talk." Tom laughed scornfully. "You can't afford a lawyer." However, Lewis nodded in agreement. Ignoring Tom, Kira took out her phone again. "Mr. Horton, can I add you on WhatsApp? It'll make communication easier." Lewis hesitated for a moment before taking out his phone. He opened WhatsApp and told Kira his ID. Then a chat box appeared on her phone with a note that read "grandson." His face suddenly darkened. Kira was speechless. She had forgotten that they had already added each other on WhatsApp. Ignoring the man's scowl, she cleared his throat. "I randomly made a note of your ID at that time. I'll change it." She shielded her screen and changed grandson to puppy. Then, she said, "Catch you later," before hailing a cab and left. Watching her leave, Tom hesitated before looking at Lewis. "Boss, you two really are married, right?" The two had just seemed too in sync. Lewis gave him a look. "Find the best divorce lawyer and draft a contract to protect my assets outside." Tom stood up straight, "Yes." After he finished speaking, Tom realized something. "I know what's going on. The marriage thing is definitely that woman's scheme. Now that she can't win your heart, she's decided to have a piece of your money. No wonder she has money to hire a lawyer to battle you in a divorce lawsuit. Even if she takes only a little, the lawyer will get quite a high salary." Tom gritted his teeth in anger. "Don't worry. I'll make sure she won't take a penny from you. Make sure he won't take a penny from me." In the taxi, Kira was also talking to Samuel. "Find the best divorce lawyer." "No problem," Samuel said. "Boss, what's the deal with your marriage? Neither you nor Lewis Horton can remember it. Surely, you can't both get amnesia, right?" Kira calmly responded, "Do you think this is a novel?" Samuel said, "I was just curious. It's both absurd and exciting. It would be nice if the Civil Affairs Bureau just sent me a wife one day." Kira sighed quietly and only responded after a moment. "There's someone who definitely knows what's going on." "Who?" "Old Mrs. Horton. Didn't she lose her memory? Is the clinical medicine for treating Alzheimer's still in the experimental stage?" She frowned. "Speed it up, or it'll be too late." "What will be too late?" Kira didn't answer this question. She arrived home shortly after. As she opened the door to enter the familiar room, she suddenly found the small 2-bedroom apartment a bit empty. At that moment, the old lady walked into the hallway with a suitcase. "Granddaughter-in-law, you're back. I've been waiting for you for a long time. This time I brought a lot of clothes with me." Kira was surprised for a moment before she smiled. That day, the most famous divorce law firm in Ocean Ion and its most famous lawyer received 2 divorce agreement drafting commissions. Both parties were anonymous, and their requests were the other party cannot be taken away my money, not even a penny. The conditions were extremely strict. The assistant lawyer complained, "I've seen many divorces, but never one this ruthless. One is a male and the other a female. Men and women are equally ruthless when they have their hearts set." Having seen every case of loving couples turning bitter enemies, the lawyer found nothing too shocking. He chuckled. "One contract, double the money. Get prepared. and sent it to our employers at Horton Group on the top floor. Since returning from the Civil Affairs Bureau, Lewis had been busy. By the time he received a call from home saying that Grandma had gone looking for her granddaughter-in-law again, it was almost time to go home. Grandma needed a body check every day to ensure all her vitals. He furrowed his brows, subconsciously opened WhatsApp, and found Need Iron. He wanted to send a message, but didn't know what to say. It seemed ever since he found out that Need Iron was Kira, he had been feeling awkward. He casually scrolled through their chat history. The conversations they had before were very casual, like old friends, especially when he joined her to say bad things about her enemy. Wait, wasn't the person she insulted that day at the restaurant himself? Lewis's face darkened again. At that moment, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Need Iron. She had sent him a divorce contract. Mr. Horton, the property division part of the agreement is my bottom line. Can you check if it's acceptable? Property division. Did this woman scheme to marry him just for his money? Just as Lewis opened the contract, the door was pushed open and Tom walked in. Boss, I have some results on the investigation into your marriage.